develop a climate change response strategy, working towards being a net zero emission province by 2050. Deputy Speaker, the State of Environment Outlook Report 2018 makes for sober reading. It shows that the pressures on our natural systems are unsustainable. More needs to be done to protect critically sensitive and important environmental features without which the ability of the Western Cape to adapt to the impact from increasing population and climate change is uncertain. The state of the Western Cape land, biodiversity and ecosystem health, inland water, climate change, oceans and coast, and waste management are either declining or in a state of concern. Not responding to these declining environmental trends will lead to other key risks, failing to meet provincial sustainability and resilient goals. If the approach to environmental resource management as well as service provision and economic activities does not change, the cost of doing business will increase. Moving forward, service delivery and economic growth must be resource efficient, low carbon, and enhance societal resilience to find a more balanced approach to using limited resources. On estuary management, Honourable Deputy Speaker, our estuary management plans has been made available to the public for comment. The Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning, together with Cape Nature, is responsible for 29 draft estuary management plans. The Department and Cape Nature are currently reviewing these comments received and will be able to advance some of the EMPs to finalization and approval. In some cases, the team have identified the need to undertake additional stakeholder engagement to address critical concerns with a view to also advancing these to finalization and approval for implementation. These plans set out the coordination and management of various activities and impacts that occur within the estuary functional zone. For prioritized estuaries, this could ultimately lead to declaring them protected areas or special management areas to protect specific habitat types found in these ecosystems. Such has been the case with the Berg River Estuary, which was recently declared a Ramsar site under the Convention of Wetlands of International Importance. On air quality management, it is fitting that the third iteration of our Western Cape Air Quality Management Plans 2021 to 2025 released this year focus on air quality, air pollution and climate change. We cannot continue to think that die Kaapse dokter sal al die besoedeling wegwaai. Honourable Deputy Speaker, our investment of 10 million rand over the past 2 years to upgrade 12 atmospheric monitoring stations is a good investment, as this allows us to support local municipalities throughout the province to know real time what the status of the air quality is, and to assist them in drafting their air quality plans. This work also plays a crucial role in our long-term plans for a greener and more sustainable environment, whilst contributing to the implementation of the Western Cape Climate Change Strategy Vision 2050, which is currently being developed. Speaker, examples of work we do in the field include our work in the Berg River and Breede Rivers. These rivers are arteries of life in our province, and they sustain the economies of entire towns and communities. Alien clearing and pollution awareness campaigns are but two manners in which we promote the protection of these ecosystems. In exchange for our work to protect nature rewards us with a healthy and safe environment to live and work in. Organiese afval, Speaker, daar is baie geleenthede waar die algemene publiek 'n belangrike rol kan speel om ons omgewing te beskerm. In 2017, the Western Cape made a policy decision to restrict 50% of organics being sent to landfills by 2022, and the prohibition of all organics to landfills by 2027. The landfills restriction and prohibition of organics will also ensure the national waste diversion targets are met. In the Western Cape, 40% of all waste delivered to landfills is organic waste, estimated at more than 3 million tons annually. We want to increase the diversion rate of organic waste from landfills to opportunities that are value-adding. Furthermore, all license issues by the department have been amended and municipalities are now obliged to submit organic waste diversion plans. Speaker, I want to thank our Environmental Quality Enforcement Directorate, whose officials are our eyes and ears regarding environmental legislation and enforcement. We recently trained 9 Green Scorpions to be qualified drone operations, allowing us to work more effectively and with greater safety. Officials can station themselves at a safe distance from dangerous terrain or volatile situations, in effect allowing us to do more with less. Speaker, also a word of thanks to our officials who assisted and supported the multi-stakeholder operation to salvage the NS Qingdao bulk carrier. The ship was at risk of an uncontrolled fire earlier this year, just off the coastline, representing a real environmental disaster threat. Since then, the ship has been anchored at the port of Saldanha Bay, from where all the affected chemical cargoes was salvaged and safely disposed of at Vissers Hoek Hazardous Waste Facility. Speaker, the good cooperation between SAMSA, DFFE, South Africa Ports Authority, the ship owners, and our provincial officials shows us what can be achieved through teamwork. Dink net wat ons kan vermag as ons hierdie vlak van samewerking van DFFE, SAPS en die weermag kan kry ten opsigte van perlemoenstropery aan ons kus. Speaker, Cape Nature, ons bewaringsentiteit, lewer 'n ongelooflike belangrike en goeie diens aan die Weskaap. Cape Nature het onlangs hul nuutste toerismesyfers bekend gemaak en dit is iets om op trots te wees. Cape Nature ecotourism earnings increased by a record 60.5% compared to previous financial year. What is even more remarkable is that it surpasses a pre-COVID-19 target of 2019-2020. This is notwithstanding a 2-year price freeze and limited access due to COVID regulations. Despite COVID, Cape Nature has seen an increase in the number of visitors frequenting its reserves. Visitor numbers have grown by 36% at the end of February 2022 compared to the same period in 2021-2022. Top destinations and attractions remain the Whale Trail at the Hoop Nature Reserve, Algeria in the Cederberg Wilderness, Kugelberg Nature Reserve outside Claremont, and Grootvaartsbos Nature Reserve near Swellendam. Cape Nature has embraced technology. It recently launched its own visitors app. Cape Nature also partnered with the mobile mapping app Forge, listing most of Cape Nature's trails which can be accessed offline as well. This free app goes a long way to ensuring hiking safety. Cape Nature was also announced as the first runner-up in the Reigniting Africa Tourism Travel Awards. The entity was recognized among 16 other entries, which acknowledge the most impactful, story-driven, and positive destination campaign. The Sinyaya Come Wild With Us series, in collaboration between Cape Nature, Wesgro, and Sandparks, and produced by Francois Oudendal Production, was awarded the Best Documentary at the Golden Bee International Children Film Festival held in New Delhi, India. The extraordinary series bridges the gap between young children and nature with a deeply resonant conservation message. In the 2021 Cape Nature Mbali collection at Kugelberg Nature Reserve received the Cape Institute of Architects Award for Architecture. The nomination and award illustrate Cape Nature's effort to produce architecturally designed significant, low-impact tourism infrastructure that follows the entity's philosophy of touching the earth lightly. Cape Nature conducts protected area management effectiveness assessments of all protected areas they manage every 2 years, of which the latest one was done in 2021. The results of the 2020 to 2022 assessment reflects that 94% of the area managed by Cape Nature is in sound management category of 67% and above. No protected areas were categorized as having inadequate management. Cape Nature Conservation Estates has already increased with 33,354 hectares in 2021-2022 through protected areas expansion and stewardship programs, of which 12,577 hectares were formally declared as protected areas. Speaker, but we also have to talk about drift sands. The Drift Sands Nature Reserve, situated in the western boundaries of Mfuleni, has been subjected to continuous unlawful occupation since July 2020. COVID-19 regulations stipulated in terms of the Disaster Management Act of 2002 prohibited Cape Nature to take lawful actions to remove the unlawful structures and occupants. Deputy Speaker, a major concern is that the unlawful structures have been erected in flood-prone areas such as the Kuils River floodplain and associated wetlands. In light of safety concerns, occupants have been asked to relocate voluntarily before the start of the winter rains. An intergovernmental task team was established to plan for disaster management and mitigate this risk. Cape Nature have also responded to 82 veld fires, with a total estimated 25,000 hectares burned to date. Most of these fires were started due to people negligence, and many of these fires could have been avoided. The combined response and support, including financial support through the Provincial Disaster Management Centre, district, local municipalities, fire protecting associations working on fire, wildfire volunteer groups, and Cape Nature are critical in the response of veld fires in the Western Cape. Thank you to Cape Nature CEO Dr. Omar and the team. In the time where South Africa's news is dominated by weak, corrupt and dysfunctional state-owned entities, it is a pleasure to be associated with you. Keep up the good work. Deputy Speaker, on planning. Speaker, monitoring and protecting the environment is only one half of our work. The other half relates to people who live and work in the Western Cape. Nothing has a greater impact on the environment than people. Because of the Western Cape reputation as the best run province in the country and Cape Town's being recognized internationally as a destination to work and visit, we are seeing an inward migration and natural population growth of 100,000 plus people per year to this province. Speaker, hierdie groei in populasie beteken dat die Kaapstad binne die volgende 8 jaar 'n stad so groot soos Bloemfontein gaan moet bou om almal te huisves wat hierna toe kom. Dit beteken water, elektrisiteit, hospitale, skole en al die infrastruktuur wat daarmee gepaard gaan. Some of these new residents are wealthy business people, bringing money and jobs and opportunities to this province as they relocate their businesses. Some are traveling across borders through war zones to make a new beginning here. Some people arrive by plane, some arrive with moving companies, and some with only the clothes on their back. Ongelukkig is dit die feit dat die nasionale toelaas nie saam met die mense na die Weskaap toe kom nie. Die geld volg nie die voete nie. Sensus elke 10 jaar hou nie tred met die vinnige verandering omgewing waarbinne ons leef nie. Dankie vir die goeie werk wat die span by ontwikkelingsbeplanning vir ons in hierdie verband doen. Akkurate en opgedateerde inligting word geskep wat ons in staat stel om waardevolle beplanning te doen. Deputy Speaker, inclusionary housing. Speaker, one of my priorities is to promote spatial integration to build social cohesion and connected, safer spaces in our towns. We are looking forward to being the first province in South Africa to introduce an inclusionary housing policy framework. Our planning and land use management system must pursue spatial justice in the Western Cape. Our policy framework will support and guide municipalities to develop their own policy and reform, and to leverage the planning system to support the supply of well-located affordable housing in partnership with the private sector. Our regional social project program is another example where we use planning as a tool to help communities to build infrastructure that improves quality of life, makes for safer spaces, and creates employment all at the same time. Deputy Speaker, we must thank the private sector for supporting our Property Development Forum initiative, where the space is created for government and private sector to engage one another on matters relating to development. Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, allow me to welcome our new HOD to the department. You will find a strong and capable team to support you. I also want to thank Karen Shippey for your steady hand as acting HOD. And also thank you to Piet van Zyl, who retired this year after doing a great job over the last 10 years. And with that, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I table the 2022 budget for the Department of Environmental Affairs and Development Planning.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. No questions. Thank you. We will now move on to Honourable Moran.
Thanks, Speaker. Am I audible?
You are audible.
Thanks very much, speakers. Deputy Speaker, Premier, the leader of the official opposition, members present. The great Amilcar Cabral once said, and I quote, "Tell no lies, claim no easy victories. Expose lies whenever they are told." When the MEC of Health earlier spoke about the health budget, she also mentioned the Dorings, and she spoke as if I am not present in this meeting, specifically that I'm from the Dorings. The MEC speaker were here 2 years back, and she promised the people of the Dorings a day hospital. 2 years later, there's nothing. The MEC have spoken about the ambulance station that has been opened recently, but what she don't tell us is the same 2 ambulances that we have used for the last 10 years is the only ambulances that are currently at that particular ambulance station. Another issue, Speaker, before I get to my speech, the Honourable Peter Murray yesterday spoke about a vote against this particular budget, and specifically refers to the ANC, that a vote against this budget will mean that civil servants will not receive a salary, including MPLs of this particular house. For the last 10 years, Speaker, the same Freedom Front Plus, they have voted against the budget at National Parliament. And not for one, Speaker, have a civil servant or a member of this provincial parliament not received his salary. If the Honourable Murray is aware of anyone who have not received his salary, can he please provide us with that list? And we as the ANC will deal with that particular matter. Also, Speaker, let me welcome the Honourable Mackenzie back into this house after an absence of almost a month. Speaker, the Honourable Mackenzie just arrived in time before the Premier can make an appointment of a new MEC for safety. But Speaker, that hope by the Honourable Mackenzie disappeared like thin air when the Honourable Regan Allen basically was allowed to speak after the Honourable Mackenzie. It's a sign, Speaker, or that the Honourable Allen is more senior than the Honourable Mackenzie. And lastly, Speaker, on this particular issue, when the MEC responded to the Honourable Cameron Duckmore, and Speaker, Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Duckmore was specific. Nowhere in his speech you will find where he refers to the rest of the world. He was specific by speaking about Ukraine and Palestine. and the MEC finds it necessary not to respond to the issue of Palestine. Is it because, Speaker, that the people of Palestine don't have blue eyes and blonde hair like the Premier? I'm not sure whether that's the case, but it seems so. Speaker.
Honourable Moran?
Thanks, Speaker.
I'm just concerned, are you speaking on environmental affairs and development planning as a vote? Because relevance does play important in the rules, and I haven't heard you talk about environmental affairs yet. You've been speaking about ambulances and Ukraine. So please
I'm ready to speak. I got 16 minutes. How many minutes do I have left?
You may proceed.
How many minutes do I have left, Speaker?
12 minutes, 44 seconds.
12 minutes, 44 seconds. Thank you, Speaker. In the State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa said, and I quote, "We will ensure strict accordance with the environmental and other laws of our country, and that where there are differences, we work together to resolve them in the interest of our country and its people. We live in one of the regions of the world that is most affected by climate change. We frequently experience drought, floods, and other extreme weather events associated with global warming," close quote. Pointing out the importance of protecting our environment, President Ramaphosa was speaking in the context of expanding the agricultural, mining, and energy sectors. In other words, while we must promote and creating decent jobs and small-scale farmers as well, exploring and mixed energy system, protecting the environment and our natural beauty remains paramount. As policymakers, we have a constitutional duty to uphold the law and, when necessary, make new laws to ensure that not only do our people live in decent, sustainable lives, but that we also protect the environment. This department in particular is tasked with ensuring the implementing of laws and regulations that will protect our environment. Deputy Speaker, let us be clear. The people who suffer the most from climate change and the disasters that occur are not the ones who can claim from insurance or who have access to savings. The people who suffer the most from floods, from wildfires and other disasters caused by climate change are the poor. They suffer the most. We cannot, on the one hand, want to tackle the second pandemic that the Premier keeps speaking about without recognition. On the other hand, that we must also protect the environment because it is our people who suffer the most from these national disasters. This department is therefore not a junior one in this provincial government. It should be central and key. It speaks to the very kind of sustainable livelihoods that we as policymakers want to bring about for the majority of our people in this province. The question then becomes, if fighting the war of climate change requires many soldiers, can one have enough soldiers? The DA, Speaker, and we have also now listened to the response to the Premier about the environmental affairs. The Premier also got a view that there's no need for a environmental commissioner. Against the thousands of people who supported the establishment of the Office of the Environmental Commissioner, does MEC and Premier has a personal opinion that we do not need extra heads on deck to fight climate change and to protect our environment? Soon the ANC will be asking this legislature how much the public participation process held in respect of Section 71 or to Section 77 of the Provincial Constitution cost, and whether this cannot be deemed as wasteful expenditure, when the Premier and his cabinet already knew that they had no intention of listening to the outcome of this particular public participation process. Because the outcome of this public participation process was clear, the people of the Western Cape wants their environmental commissioner. Even the former DA chief of Mark Wiley made a clear submission in the participation process. The commissioner is a must. Primarily, the ANC cannot support this vote precisely because we think that this vote budget is not sufficient and that we need more institutions to support the work of this department. The environmental commissioner being one of these supporting institutions. Let us remind what the provincial constitution, the constitution we pledge to obey, respect and uphold as MPLs, say about the role of the environmental commissioner. Section 72 of that specific of the constitution says, monitor urban and rural development which may impact on the environment. investigate complaints in respect of environmental administration, recommend a course of conduct to any provincial organ of state or municipality whose activities has been investigated, act in accordance with the principles of cooperative governance and intergovernmental relations referred to Chapter 2 of the same Constitution. And lastly, the Commissioner may also add additional powers and functions as provided for in the provincial legislation. Deputy Speaker, the MEC of Environmental Affairs, Development and Planning doesn't believe it is necessary for additional instruments or soldiers to fight climate change and protect our environment. The people of Milnerton suffered the fact that the lagoon is always polluted. Do not agree with him. The small-scale and subsistence fisherfolk of Falls Bay suffering from poison snook do not agree with him. People living near Kuilsrivier where the sewage from the Zandvliet wastewater treatment works do not agree with him. The people of Zeekoevlei who are fearing another sewage spill will not agree with him. And I'm not sure after the disaster at Clifton that the people of Clifton will not agree with him as well. Yet, even more so, I do believe that officials within his own department do not agree with him. When presenting his budget in the Standing Committee, the department officials complained about how municipalities, especially the city of Cape Town, flout environmental laws and regulations, and there's almost no consequences. While the Honourable Van der Westhuizen, as usual, tried to point finger to national government, the officials were clear that they tried their utmost to have an intergovernmental approach to ensure that municipalities, Honourable Van der Westhuizen, are environmentally compliant. The officials of the department also recognize the lack of basic services delivered by the municipalities, such as the city of Cape Town, which cause pollution and which has a devastating impact on our rivers and environment. They mentioned the lack of adequate services to providing people with adequate living conditions. For this department and its budget, very little provision is made for contraventions of environmental laws. The department must rely on mediation, as there is no budget for prosecution and for courts. In other words, culprits such as the city of Cape Town are getting away with environmental murder. Indeed, as a point out to us, the APP speaks about 275 criminal charges, 175 administrative notices, but there's almost no repercussions for these criminal acts by the city of Cape Town, and even worse, still no funds to follow up. The ANC agrees with officials. Just a minute. The ANC agree with department officials. The first responsibility of private land is the landowner. We could therefore never understand why the police or law enforcement must be called in to evict people from private property. Be that as it may, we deeply regret what happened to Drift Sands, and the ANC will welcome an engagement with Cape Nature to work with the community now settled in the nature reserve to resolve that issue. But we simply cannot give up on a nature reserve. We hope there is political will from Cape Nature to resolve the Drift Sands Reserve challenge, and we certainly hope that it is not because of the area that the nature reserve finds itself in, or because it was not cost effective that Cape Nature can so easily dispose of a nature reserve. Deputy Speaker, the reality is that the tragedy of Drift Sands Nature Reserve speaks to the lack of service delivery by the DA-led city of Cape Town in this provincial government. 8,000 families, not 8,000 people, but 8,000 families, we are told move on to reserve from Mfuleni. Cape Nature had this budget. And this budget makes no provision for them to protect their land. Previous backyarders of those who were renting were evicted. Why did these people not have houses? Why could these people not be moved to service sites? Is the Provincial Department of Human Settlements getting involved, or is the MEC of Human Settlements more interested in his DA leadership ambitions? What a relief it would have been for the Department of Environmental Affairs, Development and Planning to work with their counterparts in human settlements, because their counterparts in human settlement were forced by Environmental Commissioner to tackle the challenges at Drift Sands. The ANC welcomes the compliance promotion attitude of the department, but the reality is that other provincial departments are letting them down, and hence enforcement becomes necessity. Deputy Speaker, earlier I mentioned President Ramaphosa's words in the SONA, expressing sentiments of protecting the environment amidst the economic drives, agriculture, mining and energy. The ANC therefore welcomed the department's engagement on the cases of Renosterveld and Sandveld. We are pleased that the department is engaging in a strategic partnership to ensure amidst our economic opportunities, the environment is also protected. We are also pleased that the department will look into the matter of the farm in Woolsey, where local small-scale farmers have been waiting for quite some time to move indigenous vegetation. I will have a meeting with them on Thursday. Yet the reality is that this budget is letting the department down. Funds are appropriated for consultants, 29 million for impact management, while a program for nearly 60% of the budget is for COO. The ANC, through a public-private partnership, will rather allocate to ensure that the lab is built to ensure water quality service sampling. It does not make sense to be paying private entities millions upon millions of rands per annum when these can and should be insured by the state. We believe the biodiversity budget is too little, while the MEC, as usual, blames national government. This department, in the face of the fight against climate change, does not need the blame game. It needs the MEC and the MEC for Finance to make the right budget choices. Deputy Speaker, the ANC will encourage the department, in particular its HOD, to ensure that it has its own GBV policies. GBV is not simply sexual harassment, it entails more than that. We welcome the Gender Mainstream Forum and the 2 contact persons provided by the department. But all I can say, Speaker, this is not enough. Whilst we welcome the deal at government mainstream gender, we live in the hope that they will mainstream race and disability too. We recognize the gender mainstreaming survey conducted and the zero tolerance approach in order to tackle the culture within the department. No doubt, provincial government. A sexist culture that runs throughout this provincial government. And certain officials thrive because of this culture. We are pleased that officials reported that sexual harassment policies were refreshed and relooked in the light of the Fritz saga. However, what we can clearly say is that the Gender Mainstream Forum, the sexual harassment policies, the 2 representatives are simply not working. This department and this provincial government needs a clear GBV policy. Speaker, this budget let this key department down, and therefore the ANC cannot support this budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Moran. Now recognise Honourable Makamba-Bottia. Honourable Makamba-Bottia, are you online? I see you there. There you go.
Deputy Speaker, greetings and greetings to the ministers at large. Can you hear me?
Sorry, I can hear you. You may proceed.
Okay, Deputy Speaker, in the Western Cape, there is an imbalance when it comes to creating a sustainable environment and better living conditions for our people. The provincial government and municipalities often prioritize urban areas whilst neglecting townships and informal settlements. In this province, Deputy Speaker, and under the DA government, the constitutional right to adequate water supply does not. These communities are expected to fend for themselves and see to it they get access to water. Those who are considered lucky received few liters a day from unreliable mobile water trucks. Instead of addressing issues of water security with actual water supply, this government would rather blame people for establishing informal settlement. The same government which is failing dismally when it comes to building people's houses. This government would target in townships and backyard dwellers. Deputy Speaker, solid waste management is also a major issue in the townships and informal settlement. The government is struggling with clearing illegally disposed waste and reducing landfill waste. Such failure on the part of the government often results as a health hazard to communities. Health and well-being of people staying in informal settlement should be prioritized, as well as they should not be treated like subhumans. Deputy Speaker, urban planning and inclusivity are at the heart of special planning, and the department is not doing much in this regard. This is a sphere where the department was supposed to work in collaboration with the Provincial Department of Human Settlement and municipalities in giving effect to the provisions of social development. Deputy Speaker, Deputy Speaker, this is a sphere where the department was supposed to work in collaboration with the provincial department in human settlement. It will take years and a new government for urban planning, which is based on inclusivity, to take place in the Western Cape. We are often told how the money is spent on special planning, but the actual accommodation of our people does not take place. It is these reasons, Deputy Speaker, that the EFF does not support this particular vote. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable August. Oh, he's not here. Thank you very much for letting me know. We move on to Honourable Peter Murray, also not here. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I recognise Honourable Brinkcase. Is he online? No? No, I take it he's not. They then move over to Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Geachte adjunct speaker.
One minute, Honourable van der Westhuizen. Honourable Brinkcase is just coming to the House. I'm going to allow him to speak before you do. If you would just indulge with me. Thank you very much. Honourable Brinkcase.
Thank you very much, Speaker.
I'll wait for you.
Honourable Deputy Speaker.
You ready? You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay,
Speaker.
the time will go on. You may begin.
Oh, thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Put your microphone on. Your microphone.
It is on,
Okay.
Speaker.
Apologies.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. It is a fact that the province's most challenging environmental issues are linked to the widespread poverty, lack of basic services, and inequitable allocation of environmental costs in communities. The Al-Jamaah therefore once again appeals to those implementing and making decisions on environmental matters to be just and transparent. It is normally the poor that bear the brunt of unjust environmental practices, despite our constitution stating that everyone has a right to an environment that is not harmful to the health and that the environment be protected. Al-Jamaah calls for the appointment of an environmental commissioner. The past 10 years have proven that there is no accountability from officials in the department. Almost all of Cape Town's popular beaches are amongst the 31 polluted sites along the coastlines. The sewage pollution into our water alleys is still occurring, causing harm to people, animals, and marine life. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now call on Honourable van der Westhuizen. You may begin.
Agbare adjunct speaker, die welstand van die omgewing is ons almal se verantwoordelikheid. Elkeen het 'n rol te speel, maar die daarstel van wetgewing is die verantwoordelikheid van hierdie en ander wetgewende liggame. Ons as provinsiale parlement, en dis 'n groot verantwoordelikheid om deur wetgewing en ander maatreëls die omgewing te beskerm. Agbare Brinkhuis het sopas aangehaal uit die grondwet en ek wil graag dieselfde doen. Artikel 24 van die grondwet is duidelik en ek haal aan: elkeen het die reg op 'n omgewing wat nie skadelik vir hul gesondheid of welsyn is nie. En B, op die beskerming van die omgewing wat ter wille van huidige en toekomstige geslagte deur redelike wetgewende en ander maatreëls wat besoedeling en ekologiese agteruitgang voorkom, bewaring bevorder en die ekologies volhoubare ontwikkeling en aanwending van natuurlike hulpbronne verseker, terwyl dit regverdigbare ekonomiese en maatskaplike ontwikkeling bevorder. Besluite en optredes wat 'n invloed op die omgewing het, is meestal langtermyn van aard. Ongelukkig dui wetenskaplikes al die afgelope aantal jare aan dat die eise wat tans aan die omgewing gestel word op die lange duur onhoudbaar is. Dit word ook bevestig in die Departement van Omgewingsake en Ontwikkelingsbeplanning se 2018 verslag met die titel vooruitsig vir die omgewing. Die Afrikaanse kunstenaar en sanger Nathaniel Leroux het met digterlike vryheid 'n lied geskryf oor die druk waaronder Moeder Aarde verkeer. Die lied wys ons daarop dat ons maar een Moeder Aarde het. Vergun my om 'n paar strofes uit hierdie lied voor te lees. Iewers klink 'n echo, nog 'n skoot uit 'n geweer. Iewers vlug daar diere en 'n groot boom val neer. Iewers in die verte word nog 'n stad gebou. Iewers vaar 'n vragskip oor die see se laaste blou. En iewers onder alles sug Moeder Aarde swaar. En dan die refrein: sy vryf haar moe bene, sy het 'n lang pad geloop. Sy wonder oor haar kinders, dis haar heel laaste hoop. Sy vou haar hande saam, soos in eensaam gebed. O, wanneer gaan ons leer? Sy's al wat ons het. Moeder Aarde draai haar om uit die son se ergste brand, en sy droom van digte woude, en haar oë waai vol sand. Sy soek na haar kinders, maar hulle dans nou met musiek, langs 1000 vuil riviere, langs berge van plastiek. Agbare adjunkspeaker, agbare lede, sien u ook die son se brand al feller? Sien u ook die gevaar van vuil riviere? Sien u ook die groeiende berge van plastiek? To preserve and care for the environment is every person's responsibility. We are, however, fortunate that some people and entities dedicate their time, knowledge, and resources to concentrate on this. I wish to acknowledge the important watchdog role that environmental activists are playing. Yet, we also need the professional input, the specialized knowledge and dedication as provided by the staff of this department. It has repeatedly been said and confirmed by visitors to the Western Cape that the Western Cape is blessed with great natural beauty. This is then also the reason why we are such a popular tourist destination and why many films and advertisements are shot in the Western Cape. Over the last week, many road and mountain bike cyclists and their supporters have flocked to the Western Cape to enjoy our great weather and incredible landscapes. This leads to highly sustainable income sources, but also confirms the importance of conservation and finding the right balance between conservation and sensitive developments. Finding this balance is often difficult. The situation is complicated by the fact that the latest research and generally accepted best practices are often intended for developed countries. We cannot deny that the needs of a developing country such as ours, with high levels of unemployment, with a need to accelerate economic growth, differ vastly from countries that have already developed their economies. These short-term needs often seem to be in conflict with the conservation of the environment. As stated earlier, caring for the environment is the shared responsibility of all, including all three spheres of government: local, provincial, and national. By law, certain important responsibilities rest with the central government. The Standing Committee last year invited the National Minister of the Department of Environment, Forestry and Fisheries, Barbara Creasy, and her officials to attend a meeting and to assist us as members in our oversight role over the provincial department. The central government provides some funding towards the clearing of alien vegetation, and we need to ensure that the Western Cape is spending the funding prudently. It is with regret that I need to inform this House that Minister Creasy made it quite clear in her response that she is not open to this kind of cooperation with the Western Cape. In the greater interest and importance of the environment, I'm formally requesting her again to reconsider her unwillingness to cooperate and assist us in our oversight role over this provincial department. Unfortunately, I have to ask myself, why is she so reluctant to engage at this level, when many other national departments, such as National Treasury, welcome engagements with provinces? I can only imagine that she fears that such cooperation may expose the many failures of her department. Failures to manage the sustainability of stocks of wild abalone, crayfish, and many marine fish species. Let me remind this House that many of the species of alien vegetation that threaten our natural fynbos vegetation and that now need to be cleared at great cost were introduced to South Africa by the former National Department of Forestry. Let me again remind the House of the high levels of unemployment amongst the former employees of the National Department of Forestries, communities that still stay in the Bosdorpe, far from commercial centres, schools, clinics and other services. Communities that have been deserted by national government, its former employer, and now turn to local DA governments in the Western Cape to address their plight. I regret this lack of cooperation between the different spheres of government. Current legislation regarding exploration and mining is also failing to recognise the benefits that the active cooperation of all three spheres of government would be able to bring when it comes to the management of the environment. The Western Cape has never benefited from mining to the extent that many of our northern provinces have. In the process, however, we've been saved from some of the dangers and risks associated with mining, particularly the deadly effects of acid mine water. The spill of acid mine water recently wiped out almost all aquatic life along a 60-kilometer stretch of the Wilge and Olifants rivers, feeding the Loskop Dam. Despite our limited exposure to the benefits of mining, there are currently huge concerns about the possible environmental degradation due to mining activities along the West Coast. I've personally seen some of the damage caused by past diamond mining along the Northern Cape's coastline. One can only hope that the national departments responsible for mineral resources and the environment have the capacity to ensure that these mining companies operate within the environmental limitations set by current legislation. Although we do not have the pollution problems associated with mining or nearly the same volume of untreated sewage being dumped into our rivers as seen in northern provinces, we have our own serious problems with periodic sewage spills. And Honourable Maran rightly referred to this. This is, however, often caused by malicious damage to sewage infrastructure. This damage ranges from cable theft to items such as spent fire and gas cylinders being dumped in sewage systems. No sewage pump is designed to withstand this kind of abuse. I believe that these actions are forms of sabotage of our environment. I call on all law enforcement agencies to investigate and act decisively against individuals that abuse public infrastructure built to treat effluent. As stated at the beginning of my speech, we all have a responsibility to conserve the environment, and this includes the wider public. We all know that many manufacturing processes combined with emissions from internal combustion engines are detrimental to air quality. And I'm grateful that Minister Bradell also referred to our atmospheric measuring. This was clearly noticed when the quality of the air in the Western Cape improved vastly during the severe level 5 lockdown period. Many countries have taken steps to promote the use of battery-powered vehicles. These vehicles are not only better for the environment, but they also have a much lower running cost than vehicles running on petrol or diesel. The running costs are in general about 1/3 of the cost of traditional vehicles. A general switch to electric vehicles at this stage will unfortunately put our already highly constrained electricity supply under further strain. Again, Eskom is not only limiting economic growth, it is also forcing us to rely on petrol and diesel. And Eskom itself is a major contributor to the high levels of air pollution, in particular in Mpumalanga. I referred last week to the lambasting that Minister Creasy received from the courts for her department's ineptness and inability to finalise its policy on air pollution. However, many forms of pollution are not clearly visible. Air pollution goes a lot further than smoke, which is clearly visible. Water pollution is also not easy to spot and therefore sometimes go unnoticed for long periods. Contrary to this, solid waste pollution is clearly visible. Littering and illegal dumping remains a serious and international problem and clean-up campaigns have been met with different successes in various communities. I believe the time is right for another national clean-up campaign. Fortunately, great strides have been made in terms of recycling, and we are learning every day of ways to decrease the volumes of solid waste. Waste reduction starts at the packaging stage, and more communities are introducing waste separation at source. I want to thank all citizens that cooperate in this regard, contributing to a better future for our children. Many authorities struggle with the annual requirement to do topographical studies regarding the available airspace for waste disposal facilities. This department's budgets over the medium term include amounts to assist municipalities in this regard. The department is also playing an important role in the planning and establishment of regional waste disposal sites. As stated earlier, conservation and environmental issues are often long-term initiatives, and our successes or failures will only be fully appraised by future generations. I'm proud of the work that Cape Nature is doing in the Western Cape. Cape Nature is managing large tracts of public land in the province, but it's also the main implementing agent for many initiatives, such as the clearing of alien vegetation earlier referred to. Due to budget constraints, the emphasis on alien clearing is, however, contained to water catchment areas. Teams from Cape Nature also assist in the fighting of wildfires, as Minister Bradell referred to earlier. Cape Nature is also employing large numbers of young people under the expanded Public Works program. Many young South Africans have been given an opportunity to gain work experience and develop their knowledge and skills through this scheme. My heart bleeds, however, for those young people who have grasped this opportunity with both hands, yet fail to find employment once their fixed-term employment agreements expire. And for this, unfortunately, the national government and its economic policies must be held responsible. Great advances have been made in the management of tourist facilities in the nature reserves under the control of Cape Nature. I'm particularly pleased by the progress in facilitating online bookings and the fact that potential tourists are now able to see for themselves the availability of facilities and accommodation online. All indications are that the investments in tourism facilities are not only contributing greatly to social well-being and a positive appraisal of our natural assets, but that it's also generating a net income for Cape Nature. The support of tourism is contributing to the much-needed economic recovery of the Western Cape, following the economic damage caused by COVID-19 regulations. Unfortunately, there are also various threats to our reserves, and Minister Bradell referred to the Driftlands Reserve, which was a strategically placed urban reserve, protecting one of the last tracts of remaining Cape Flats duneland vegetation. And I welcome the promised support by the Honourable Maran to see what we can still save of this reserve. Its location allowed the land to be used for educational purposes and as a traditional initiation site. The COVID-19 regulations prohibiting the removal of shelters have contributed to the illegal occupation and invasion of the Driftlands Reserve. And, as was referred to earlier, some of the areas invaded were unsafe. During the course of last summer, hundreds of shacks were erected on an unstable dam wall, which may have seemed to be safe during the summer season. However, we are aware of the annual flooding during winter and the pressures to then find suitable alternative sites for relocation. Various court orders and actions claimed at protecting the site, reported costing as much as 335 million rand, were unsuccessful in preventing this illegal land invasion. On the development planning side, the department is at an advanced stage to finalize documentation to guide municipalities on policies, ensuring that the advancement of integrated housing be done according to best practices. The department is also actively engaging with municipal planning officials in advancing practices that promote safety through clever design practices. The work of these officials is also important in order to plan for future mobility and spatial transformation in the Western Cape. We also need to improve the capacity for urban management at local government level, one of various risks identified and linked to planning. One only has to look at the bottom line of this department's budget for the upcoming year to note just how constrained the overall budget is. Unfortunately, every year brings with it its immediate needs, and important but longer-term initiatives are often moved to the outer years. Often the choice is between the construction of another school to accommodate a fast-growing youth population and the longer-term conservation actions. It should therefore not come as a surprise to learn that this department's budget for the upcoming year sees a 9% cut when compared with the final amount spent some 2 years ago in 2019-2020. The total expenditure budget for the upcoming year amounts to just over 568 million rand. I'm grateful to report that the majority of the members on the Standing Committee on Environmental Affairs and Development Planning supported the budget of Vote 9 for the department, and the ANC voted against this budget, but unfortunately did not at the time indicate whether they find the amount set aside for this budget too big or too small, or where they would have liked the difference in the amounts to be allocated to or come from. I would like to put a friendly request to the Leader of the Opposition that in the future, please indicate how the ANC's alternative budget would have looked like. You owe it to the voters to put an alternative and not only to vote against everything. I therefore ask all members of this House to support this budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I just check someone's got their telephone on with their two devices next to each other? Please, there is some feedback. I would now like to recognize Honourable Minister Bredell.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you. I'm going to start with the Chairperson of the Standing Committee, Honourable Hendrikus van der Westhuizen. I want to thank you for your leadership, your oversight role. We colleagues, but that doesn't prevent you from being strict with us and hold us accountable. So thank you very much for your role in protecting our environment. Deputy Speaker, the rest is very difficult to answer. I do understand that the ANC has got a Congress this year, and the Honourable Moran, Deputy Speaker, he touched on ambulances, Ukraine, human settlements, the response of the Premier, agriculture, gender. He was all over the show. So he then realized that he must talk about the environment, and no surprise, he jumped onto this sy gitaar sonder snare, the Environmental Commissioner. Honourable Speaker, aan die agbare rang, ons het 7,1 miljoen mense in die Weskaap, so ek kan ook die argument hê dat 99% van die mense stem saam met my op hierdie stadium. So ons kan maar net so goed kyk, maar ek is oop vir enige oortuiging as daar, agbare Deputy Speaker, enige meriete is. Ons is nooit bang vir oorsig nie, maar ons moet teruggaan na die grondwet toe, oorsig met 'n mag, sodat die Environmental Commissioner kan optree, maar oorsig vir die rol van oorsig gaan niemand help nie. En wat die agbare Moran nalaat om te sê is dat ons kan 10 Environmental Commissioners aangestel het as die ANC nasionale regering hierdie land nie in bankrotskap bestuur het nie. Ons het nie geld nie. As hierdie departement 15 miljoen rand kry, moet ons gaan kyk waar kan ons hierdie 15 miljoen rand tot voordeel van die omgewing en ons nageslag aanwend. En waar ek tans staan, gaan dit nie die omgewingskommissaris wees nie, tensy iemand my anders kan oortuig. So hy kan maar van daai dingetjie afklim, daar is 'n proses en ons sal die proses respekteer. Agbare Speaker, ja, verder is dit moeilik, hy het gepraat oor energie, dit is nogal interessant dat hy energie genoem het, die agbare Moran, en dan gooi hy president Ramaphosa se naam in, seker ook om te ondersteun by sy kongres, maar hy moet net onthou die agbare president was die deputy president onder Zuma wat verantwoordelik was vir Eskom. So kom ons los dit maar daar. Dis 'n totale mislukking en net een groot besoedelstorie wat baie hartseer is. Die hele drifsand aangeleentheid, ons departement is baie ernstig daaroor en Karen en haar taakspan werk al 18 maande, omdat ons vreens lewens verlies. En ek wil regtig 'n beroep doen op alle politieke partye om ons te help. Mense moet vrywillig skuif na areas wat geïdentifiseer is vir veiligheid. Mense moet nie nou kom met lang lyste of waglyste te probeer spring nie. Ons gaan kinders en vrouens se lewens in gevaar stel want daar's 'n ramp wat net wag om te gebeur met die eerste vloed wat kom. So ons is baie senuweeagtig as 'n departement en ons doen alles moontlik en ons vra regtig dat mense met ons moet saamleef. Die oorlog in hierdie land is teen armoede. En ek wil vir die agbare Maran weer herinner dat as sy party nie hierdie land in bankrotskap bestuur het nie, sal ons omgewing veilig gewees het. Want armoede eet die omgewing op. So 'n arme mens het ongelukkig ander behoeftes as wat ons vandag dink ons het. Laastens, agbare Deputy Speaker, ek wonder hoekom beweeg al die mense Kaap toe? Die antwoord is eintlik baie maklik. Hulle vlug van ANC-regering. So, agbare Deputy Speaker, ek is baie trots op wat ons bereik in ons departement en ek wil regtig vir die agbare Maran vra, hy moenie subtiel my amptenare in politiek probeer betrek nie. Die agbare Dakmor het my gevra eendag by hulle staan as hulle 'n komitee het, die ANC of ons amptenare hulle kan kom inlig en toelig met die grootste liefde. Maar jy verskoon hulle dan en ons trek nie ons amptenare in. Ons moet staat en party skei. Ons het die hoogs bekwame amptenare en ek het baie respek vir my amptenare se kwalifikasies. En se opinie. Ons doen ook ons uiterste bes om ons rade tot verantwoording te doen. Maar daar is interregeringsverhoudings. Ja, daar is al 'n klomp direktiewe uitgereik teenoor die stad. Ja, daar is probleme. Die probleem is nie hofsaake nie. Daar mors ons geld op 'n hofsaak wat eintlik in die omgewing moes gegaan het. So ons is heeldag besig met interregeringsverhoudings en ons groenskerpioenespan tree op binne die wetgewende raamwerk so streng as wat hulle kan. Ons is besig met 'n redelike skuif en ons denke ook om nie net die munisipale bestuurder op 'n direktief se naam te noem nie, maar ook die burgemeester. Want as hulle dit hof toe gaan albei tot verantwoording geroep word. So ons kram nie weg daarvan nie en sommer net so terloops, die enigste direktief wat ons dit al gedoen het, was in 'n DA-beheerde raad. So ons speel nie politiek met die omgewing nie. To the Honourable Botja, the water issue I struggle to follow, but water quality and quantity for us is very important. We need to plan it and we need to be ready because environment moves in cycles. The next drought, when will it be? We don't know, but we need to plan. And if you look at, and that is why it's so important, Honourable Member, to get the population, the movement, the population growth figures correct, to understand that, because in a 12-month period, 108,000 people moving to the Western Cape, meaning that we need 21.7 million litres of water a day extra. So in the next 8 years, we need to build half a Webbershoek dam. And we know we can't trust the ANC to build any dams because that will be another corruption scandal again, like ask the KZN people. So we need to make plans. So we work very closely with our municipalities to see to how we can work on a variety of concepts, from desalination to boreholes, etc., to help them. Informal housing and definitely from where I'm standing, myself and the Minister of Human Settlement work very closely together with the inclusionary housing policy, and we will be the first province that announce on that, and we will then walk the path with our municipalities to support them. Agbare Speaker, agbare Brinkhuis is 100% reg. Die armste van die armste gaan die brand bear as dit kom by die omgewing, maar weer eens, armoede is die oorsaak van die omgewing wat swaar kry. En die oorsaak van die armoede in hierdie land is ongelukkig die ANC. Dis die waarheid, dis waar ons staan en ons moet almal nou hande vat en kyk hoe kan ons onsself hier uitlig, want as ons nie in korrupsieskandale verval het oor die afgelope jare nie, was dit nou die geleentheid ons sal een van die beste groeiende ekonomie in die land, in die wêreld gehad het. So namens myself wil ek dan my ministerie ook bedank vir hulle harde werk, hulle ondersteuning en onder die leiding van Marius Durant. Baie dankie dat ek altyd op julle kan staatmaak. Dankie, agbare Speaker.
Baie dankie, Minister. Thank you very much. That concludes the debate on vote 9. It's going to give you a quick second. I think you may depart. Thank you very much to Minister's guests. While I give him a few minutes just to, and perhaps his other department to come in. Oops. Can I assume you're right? You ready, Minister? Here we go. Okay, I think everybody's here. I now will ask the Secretary to read the fourth order of the day.
Debat oor begrotingspos 14, plaaslike regering, Wes-Kaapse begrotingswetsontwerp.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I recognize the Honourable Minister Burdell.
Agbare Deputy Speaker, Honourable Premier, Honourable Cabinet colleagues, members of the Legislature, Head of the Department, ladies and gentlemen. Dankie vir die geleentheid om vandag die Departement van Plaaslike Regering se begroting voor te lê. Deputy Speaker, ons leef in 'n era waar die wêreld so vinnig verander dat regerings reg oor die wêreld sukkel om by te bly met hul basiese verantwoordelikhede teenoor die mense wat hulle dien. Ons in Suid-Afrika ervaar dit ook en as provinsiale regering is ons nie hiervan uitgesluit nie. Die Departement van Plaaslike Regering is ook nie hierby uitgesluit nie. Ek wil in die begin ons uitsoudie van Plaaslike Regering en sy span dankie sê vir die goeie werk wat hulle onder dikwels baie moeilike omstandighede doen. Dit was nie 'n maklike jaar tot dusver nie. Honourable Deputy Speaker, this budget presented today by the Department of Local Government reflects this new reality of the fast-changing environment in which we support and guide municipalities in the Western Cape. The traditional Khoisan Leaders Act is a good example of how times are changing and how we have adapted. Last year saw the adoption of the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act. Premier Windy has then assigned the powers and functions relating to this act to me. This creates new responsibilities for the department to, amongst others, develop policy and new legislation as stipulated in the act. Deputy Speaker, the local government elections from last year gave us a new political landscape characterized by coalitions. Coalition government work in theory, but on the ground, there are and we are faced with many challenges. Speaker, ons raadslede gaan volwasse moet raak. Ons gaan moet leer om ons kleinlike politieke geskille eenkant te sit en ons sal moet leer om ons werk, om saam te werk tot voordeel van die publiek wat ons beloof het om te dien. Eskom is the elephant in the room. Speaker, we cannot debate local government without addressing the elephant in the room, Eskom. We especially need to talk about municipalities that do not pay Eskom. The amounts owed to Eskom by South Africa local governments are truly shocking. The debt owed to Eskom older than 90 days. The Western Cape municipalities, 134.7 million. Northern Cape municipalities, 2.5 billion. Northwest municipalities, 2.7 billion. Mpumalanga municipalities, 12.4 billion. Limpopo municipalities, 968.1 million. KZN municipalities, 428.2 million. Gauteng municipalities, 4.87 million. Free State municipalities, 15.01 billion. Eastern Cape municipalities, 1.87 billion. The total debt owed by the Western Cape municipalities amount to 3% of the total municipal debt owed to Eskom. It should be noted that there are currently only 4 municipalities in the Western Cape that have high outstanding debt older than 90 days. The total debt over 90 days for these municipalities collectively amounts to 134.7 million for the period ending January 2022. Speaker, al is die Wes-Kaap by verre die provinsie met die minste skuld aan Eskom, het ons daadwerklike planne en prosesse in plek om hierdie situasie te bestuur en te voorkom. The Western Cape Department of Local Government, in collaboration with Provincial Treasury, have instituted preventative measures in an aim to reduce debt owed to Eskom by municipalities. These measures include regular monitoring and of debt amounts owed by municipalities, as well as ensuring the effective implementation of and adherence to signed payment arrangements between municipalities and Eskom to ensure that these arrangements are honoured. Speaker, non-payment to Eskom is a symptom of a larger underlying problem facing local governments throughout this country. A culture of weak and no financial management. My Department of Local Government is currently working on several initiatives to address this and to provide support needed to improve where necessary. Speaker, ons vind dat verskillende munisipaliteite het wyd uiteenlopende pryse vir dieselfde basiese dienste. Sommige dorpe is op pad om mense uit hulle huise uit te belas as gevolg van tariefstrukture. Die Departement van Plaaslike Regering is daarom met 'n projek besig waar ons munisipaliteite gaan help om opnuut na hul tariefstrukture te kyk sodat daar meer eenvormigheid kan wees. Dit moet ook realisties en markverwant wees om volhoubaar te kan wees. A municipality's ability to effectively collect rates and services rendered are crucial for long-term financial sustainability. We are providing guidance, support and turnaround advice to local governments if they need to improve in this regard. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, munisipaliteite wat nie gesonde finansiële bestuur toepas nie, het ook dikwels geen beheer oor hul personeelkomponent nie. Daar waar die plaaslike regering se personeelkoste nie die inkomste van die munisipaliteit reflekteer nie, help die departement met advies en kundigheid om volhoubare menslike hulpbronne strategieë te ontwikkel en te implementeer. Speaker, as government, we need to engage with our citizens, and we need to do this every day, and not just before election. In order to improve citizen engagement, the department is implementing a very successful Tucson Center program, where we bring a host of government services to grassroots levels in our communities. We have also rolled out mobile Tucson centers to cater for small and far-flung municipalities. Honourable Deputy Speaker, daar is 'n gesegde in Afrikaans dat jy nie die wiel hoef oor te herontwerp nie. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. In die Wes-Kaap het ons die Joint District and Metro Approach, die JDMA, ontwikkel. Dit is 'n raamwerk waar ons samewerking tussen rolspelers vanuit alle oorde aanmoedig om saam met mekaar te werk oor departementele mandate en grense heen. Die JDMA werk baie goed waar mense dit implementeer. Ons het die COVID-19 pandemiek daar volgens bestuur. Ons gebruik dit om die droogte aksieplan te bestuur. Die provinsiale ekonomiese herstelplan word volgens die JDMA beginsels bestuur. Deputy Speaker, the JDMA works well and more districts and local municipalities are seeing the results and are learning to use it in their unique settings. Now, for reinventing the wheel, the National District Development Model, DDM, this approach wants to see the National ANC Minister being delegated to manage and oversee the so-called one plans in the district municipalities. We have not seen a one plan, Deputy Speaker. I can only speculate, but it seems the ANC is seeking the Trojan horse effect to get access to the Western Cape. Laat ek egter u herinner, die Wes-Kaap word tans deur die DA regeer. Los die DDM en werk eerder saam met ons volgens die bestaande, gevestigde, suksesvolle JDMA model. Deputy Speaker, if there is one thing we have learned through all the recent challenges of COVID, drought, and the economic upheavals of recent years in this, when you have limited resources, the only way to be successful is if you collaborate across fence and borders in order to achieve a common goal. This is the same lesson our coalition councillors must learn if they are to see lasting stability and prosperity in their towns and cities. En daar is geleentheid tot groot sukses te ontsluit as ons saamwerk. Geld gaan net daar waar daar vrede is. My departement doen werk in hierdie verband om munisipaliteite te help om hulself te posisioneer vir investering. The potential to derive maximum positive benefits from infrastructure investment is one such initiative to maximize investment. Traditionally, the challenges associated with attracting private sector investment includes, amongst others, misalignment of infrastructure planning and coordination between the three spheres of government, aging infrastructure and lack of maintenance, a weak economic outlook impact, the fiscal environment, leading to reduced allocations from national and provincial governments to support capital infrastructure investment. To promote infrastructure development, the department will focus on the following initiatives: the development of the provincial-wide infrastructure master plan, energy, water and roads, the development of a special purpose vehicle to facilitate the infrastructure financing model, drive the support infrastructure grant and the Division of Revenue Act reform, development of and assess management, the development of asset and management and maintenance programs to safeguard infrastructure investment, the development of a 15-year Western Cape integrated drought and water response plan to secure water resilience in this province. Speaker, our Disaster Management Centre is another example of collaboration leading to success. Our track record with wildfires prevention and control speaks for itself. 90% of the fires are managed within the first hour after reported. We achieved this through excellent teamwork between the diverse range of national, provincial, and local role players. This includes district municipalities, local municipalities, various firefighting units, local and nationally, as well as Cape Nature. These role players can quickly mobilize to use resources closest to the reported fire, and we send aerial support sooner than later to quickly put out small fires before they become runaway fires. And it is not only wildfires coordination. Disaster Management Centre is currently providing coordination support to the Department of Agriculture to manage locust outbreak in some of our rural areas. Speaker, a word of congratulations to our Disaster Management Centre. It was recognized at the 77th Annual Batupele Excellence Award as the best responsive government institution of the year 2021-2022. Thank you to Colin Diner and his entire team for being available 24/7 to jump in whenever there is a looming threat or an active disaster. Speaker, ons moet ook oor swak munisipaliteite praat. Die groot gros van ons werk in die departement word hier gefokus. Dit is waar ons munisipaliteite wat in die intensiewe sorg is, van die operasietafel probeer kry, tot in die waaksaal waar hulle kan herstel en dan hopelik volkome herstel om ontslaan te word. Maar die pasiënt moet ook sy kant bring. Hy moet die medisyne wat voorgeskryf word drink. Deputy Speaker, anders kan daardie siek munisipaliteit in die lijkhuis eindig. Speaker, we work very hard to support municipalities so they do not fail. But at the same time, we have to respect the fact that South Africa is a democracy and local government is an independent sphere of government. I am often approached by concerning residents who says I must place a struggling local municipality under administration. Administration is not a silver bullet that makes all problems disappear. It is a long process and it needs to adhere to strict legal prescripts. It is not a guarantee that the process of administration will yield the desired results. In a democracy, you have the opportunity to address issues at the ballot box. This system of regular, free and fair elections is still working in South Africa, and people need to know the importance and impact this has on the experience of the elected local government. Deputy Speaker, the Western Cape government will fight to keep municipalities out of the morgue, but then all involved must be mature enough to acknowledge mistakes, and to prepare to do the correct things, even when it is difficult. We are currently walking this path with Beaufort West municipalities, and officials from the department and the municipal leadership is working in good faith. But Speaker, there's also good stories. There's also good stories in the municipal domain. And if you look, Honourable Deputy Speaker, in research that was done by News 24, it's not my research, News 24 has done this research, they state that out of the best run municipalities in South Africa, there's still hope because 14 of those out of 20 within the Western Cape. So I want to congratulate all our municipalities. If you then look at other research of the worst run municipalities and the best run municipalities, and you take this list, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the best run municipalities, Cape Agulhas, Overstrand, Hessequa, Swartland, Saldanha Bay, Mossel Bay, Cape Town, Witzenberg, Prince Albert, George, Breede Valley, Stellenbosch, Knysna, Beto, Bergrivier, Swellendam, Langeberg, Drakensberg, There's a common factor, all run by the DA. There's also a common factor to the worst run municipalities. Oudtshoorn, Matsikama, Beaufort West, Kannaland, Laingsburg, Cederburg. I will leave it there, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I want to conclude to thank my department for the hard work. Every single day, they serve the people of this province to the best of their ability. With limited resources, we try our utmost best. And if you look at the results of independent studies, I believe that we are on the right track. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I now recognise Honourable Dugmore. I know you're going to wait for the podium. We can just, it will be, I'm sure. Thank you, Minister, for assisting.
Somewhere around.
You need to turn it around, Honourable Dugmore.
Okay.
Ready to begin?
Thank you
Okay.
very much, Deputy Speaker. And thank you also to MEC Bradell for his input. Deputy Speaker, at the outset, I want to raise an issue which affects the very role and mandate of this legislature and this portfolio committee in particular, especially in regard to how it affects our role in the budget. Deputy Speaker, if we are unable to play our oversight role without fear or favor, then we face a real threat to our constitutional democracy. We have a situation where the City of Cape Town has indicated that they are unwilling to answer questions that we as members of this legislature direct to the MEC for local government.
Honourable Dugmore, if you can just take your seat, there's a point of order. Honourable Bosman, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Through you, Deputy Speaker, I'd like the Honourable Dugmore to tell the House why he's speaking on local government and not the shadow MEC Danville Smith, who is online.
Speaker, just for the point
Honourable
of order.
Syed, if you, I recognise you.
Chair, thank you very much. I think just to respond on behalf of the ANC, the Honourable Smith is still on the step aside as per the ANC resolutions. Thank you.
That's fine. I will accept what the Chief Whip of the opposition party is going to say. You may continue, Honourable
Deputy Speaker.
Yes,
That is very much unlike the DA Councillor Nora Grass, who is facing
Honourable
actual
Dugmore.
charges for money laundering but remains a councillor.
Honourable Dugmore, my apologies. Honourable Moran, what's your point of order?
Speaker, just in addition to what the Honourable Khalid raised, the Honourable Dugmore is the main member for local government. Thanks.
Thank you. I heard your Chief Whip. Thank you very much. Honourable Dugmore, you may begin.
Thank you. So, Deputy Speaker, the issue that I'm raising is that the City of Cape Town has indicated that they are unwilling to answer questions that we as members of this legislature propose for written reply to the MEC, who then conveys those questions to the city. Now, for example, the City of Cape Town receives many grants from this provincial government and various departments in the province, and some of these are conditional. So if we as members wish to direct questions to the MEC regarding information about how such funds have been spent, the city argues that they have no obligation to answer these questions. And that is the situation that we're dealing with right now. So, Deputy Speaker, I want to put it on record that we as the ANC are very unhappy about the manner in which MEC Bradell is handling this matter. The MEC should in fact be supporting the oversight role of this legislature and our right to ask questions. There is no province run by the ANC where those MECs are refusing to take questions and refer them to local government. Not a single one. So what is it about that the DA in the City of Cape Town has to hide, that they've simply decided that they're not going to answer questions coming from this legislature? So it appears that the provincial government, this MEC and Premier Windy are not prepared to take on the City of Cape Town, actually as if they are scared of the City of Cape Town. If the city is allowed to refuse to be held accountable by us as members of this legislature, especially in a budget vote like this, this committee would then be in an untenable situation. I give notice that I will, as leader of the opposition, bring this matter to the attention of the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs to request her to investigate declaring an intergovernmental dispute in this regard, and further that I will write to both SALGA, the South African Local Government Association nationally, and in the Western Cape to investigate this matter. I have, for example, Deputy Speaker, reported wide-scale corruption within the City of Cape Town Housing Maintenance Department, where officials have received bribes in the form of vehicles and cash from favored service providers. And I've requested, Deputy Speaker, that the SIU approaches our president to issue a proclamation to investigate the city. It is clear that the City of Cape Town has a lot they want to hide. But, Deputy Speaker, it must be pointed out that the above stance was communicated at the time when Honourable Plato, who is now in this House, having lost out the factional battle to those forces that were supporting Jordan Hill-Lewis. It was under Mayor Plato that they indicated they refused to answer these questions. So the issue would be, and please, I'd ask for you that the MEC Bradell can respond. Does Jordan Hill-Lewis, the new mayor of Cape Town, does he have the same position that he will not answer questions coming from us?
Just take your seat, please. Your chief whip is Honourable Syed. Well, he's the chief whip of the opposition.
I know I'm being.
He's the whip of the opposition.
Being handed positions.
No intention.
Deputy Chief Whip, just on a point of order. I don't know if it's, but it's just that we can't necessarily hear the Honourable Dugmore because of the heckling that's happening on the side of the ruling party. Deputy Speaker, could they maybe just tone down?
Thanks very much, Honourable Syed. Yes, a little bit on the loud side. Heckling is allowed, but not continuous. If we can allow Honourable Dugmore to continue with his speech.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. So I would like the MEC to indicate to us whether Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis has the same attitude as his predecessor in actually refusing to answer questions from this House. And I really would appeal, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Botha indicated, and I'm not sure what she was referring to, that there's a pact between us. I'm not aware of any pact, but if there is any pact, I would like her to support us on this, that Honourable Botha should be vocal in insisting that the City of Cape Town must respond to these questions.
Order, honourable members, please. You may.
Can I continue? Thank you. The department in the budget book acknowledges its mandate as drawn from Chapter 7 of the Constitution, that what MEC Bradell's department is supposed to do is firstly to establish municipalities. I also want to indicate that MEC Bradell did not properly introduce, oh no, that was from the previous department, his new HOD. We still have HOD Pulsar. Greetings to you. That your mandate is to establish municipalities consistent with national legislation. Secondly, to support and strengthen the capacity of municipalities without fear or favor. Take off your DA hat. To regulate the performance of municipalities in terms of their functions. And finally, to intervene where there is a non-fulfillment of legislative, executive, or financial obligations to promote. Now, I would argue, Deputy Speaker, that the failure of the City of Cape Town to in any way see themselves accountable to this legislature is unconstitutional. And I wish that this MEC would have the guts to stand up and protect the rights of this House to hold local governments accountable in the context of cooperative governance. But then secondly, I want to get on to a subject that the MEC is very familiar with. It's called DA cadre deployment to local government. Deputy Speaker, it was this honourable MEC who was found to have contravened the Executive Ethics Code for members of the Executive. To remind honourable members, in case they've forgotten, it was MEC Bradell, who was also the DA Provincial Chair at the time, who wrote a letter to the DA caucus in George, trying to influence them not to support an equity candidate who in fact was recommended by his own department. This was done on a DA letterhead. This was a public service post. How does this conduct align with mandate number 4, which I read out earlier? The DA has made much, Deputy Speaker, of ANC cadre deployment. Yet, when I wrote to the then acting provincial chair of the DA in the province, Albert Fritz, for copies of all minutes and correspondence about the DA cadre deployment from 2009 to date, I did not even get a response. Maybe that's understandable, given the issues surrounding former MEC Fritz at the time. But then I was informed that MEC Simmers is now the acting provincial leader of the DA. Once again, no response to our request to provide minutes and all correspondence related to DA cadre deployment. And then I had shared in the National Assembly a second letter which actually proves once again beyond reasonable doubt how the DA national leadership, not MEC Bradell at this in this instance, but the national leadership actually got involved not only in cadre deployment, but actually re-advertising a post to especially cater for a DA loyalist, irrespective of his qualifications. The letter is written by the former FedEx chair, James Self, and is dated 17th March 2017. And writing to the then George Mayor, Self says Councillor van Wyk had a legitimate expectation that he would be appointed to the administration. The contents reveal a manipulative process to re-advertise a public service position to specifically cater for a DA councillor, Leon van Wyk, irrespective of who had applied.
Honourable Dugmore, take your seat, please. We have the Honourable Chief Whip of the House, who's Honourable Chief Whip. What's your point of order?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise on Rule 44, irrelevance.
Speaker,
Thank you.
This is a point of relevance. Are you going to make a ruling, or
I'm not going to make a ruling. I'm just Rule 44 is really. I'm not ignoring it. Okay. It's normally 44 is just a caution, which I've used before. So a caution. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, the Chief Whip herself, can hardly stand up as someone who was relevant in her speech. You would remember what she said about health.
You had the chance to raise a point of order and you didn't.
Yeah, Speaker, but what I'm trying to say, Deputy Speaker, that this is the tip of the iceberg. We are talking about a local government department, its budget. It is supposed to have oversight over municipalities. Maar hoe sê hulle, die jakkals hier is eintlik saam met die hoenders. Die jakkals speel saam met die hoenders. Dis wat gebeur. Die eintlike persoon wat veronderstel is om die hoenders veilig te hou, is besig om daai hoenders op te vreet. Dis eintlik wat gebeur hierso. And this is what we must correct. I think as the MEC matures, Deputy Speaker, we hope that he will begin to understand this mandate better, like he's trying to do with the Treasury in Beaufort West, where there's a real process to try and turn that municipality around. I think the MEC must realize he's too old for this party politics. He must just do wat hy weet hy moet doen. Hy moet die grondwet volg en hy moet die regte ding doen. If he will do that, then this province has a better chance. So, Deputy Speaker, the DA has not
Order,
responded
members.
to our request to make available all these minutes. And we initially set a deadline of the 1st of February to get this information. And that is why, as I indicated in the debate on vote 1, that we will now, Deputy Speaker, be launching in the month of April a PIA application to get all of this information. I want to appeal to the MEC. He's going to respond later. Kan hy net vir ons sê hoeveel mense was hy opdrag gegee om jobs te gee? Hy moet net vir ons nou vandag sê, vertel maar die waarheid. Hoeveel DA-lede was jy gevra om te akkommodeer? Just tell us now. Then we don't have to go to the PIA application. Come to this house and tell us what you actually did. Because we'd like you, for instance, to explain the deployment to Theewaterskloof of a DA former councillor without qualifications or experience compared to the others who had applied, who was then appointed to this particular municipality. The third issue that I want to talk about is credit control policy. We agree that part of sustaining our municipalities is to do what our government had talked about in the past, which was the Masakane campaign. Pay for the services that you use. But given the economic climate at the moment, what has crept in is an unacceptable policy where a poor person, possibly in a certain month, uses more than the free allocation of water. And because they have other people staying at their house, possibly in a backyard, they use more than the water. Now, that indigent person wants to go and buy electricity. So they have 50 Rand to buy electricity for the weekend. They go and buy that electricity from mainly DA-run municipalities. And instead of getting the full 50 Rands worth of electricity, that 50 Rand suddenly becomes a 10 Rand of electricity, with the other money having to go to settle an account. Now, this is biting the poor. And you've referred, and this committee has been promised a legal opinion, I believe, before I was asked to be the main member on this committee, and the committee discussed it, the MEC would recall, and hopefully the department is going to give us that legal opinion. But how do we, without undermining the culture of paying for what you use, to actually penalize the poor in this way? And we as the ANC are saying we have to find a better way, because we cannot penalize someone who literally has a 50 Rand for the weekend for electricity, but they are being penalized. So the credit control policy is critical. Number 4, I would like to ask this MEC if he agrees with the fact that it is wrong that the DA, both in the Swartland municipality as well as the Berg Rivier municipality, have appointed one of their own members as the chairperson of MPAC. If we are actually serious about a new start on financial accountability, if we are actually serious about this, an opposition member, whether they are ANC or where the DA doesn't govern, it's the DA or it's the Freedom Front or it's the PA, whoever, let us agree with the principle that MPAC must be chaired by an opposition member. That is what we need to do. And I would like to ask the MEC not to come here and talk, because the reality is in the National Assembly, an opposition member chairs the Public Accounts Committee. In this province, the ANC chairs the Public Accounts Committee. Why is it then that in places like Berg Rivier and Swartland, the DA chairs their own committee? That is wrong. Can I continue?
You may continue.
Thank you. I hope I'm getting... So impact positions is the other one. The 5th point I want to raise relates to the role of local government in land audits. The MEC, Deputy Speaker, would be aware that we raised this matter. And unfortunately, we have a situation in our country where the original sin of land dispossession remains with us. And we are trying land restitution, security of tenure, and the redistribution of land to deal with this. And all of our municipalities are sitting with municipal land, they're sitting with trust land, provincial government land, SOE land, national land as well. So we need audits which are clear and transparent, and we don't need an excuse which says that if you publish an audit that is accessible, it's going to open the way to land invasion. It is the DA's coalition partner, the EFF, who wants to cause chaos by simply invading any piece of land. And what the DA is doing by not, your coalition partner, yes, your coalition partner, and what the DA is doing by not releasing land, they are creating chaos as well. We need, as the president says, a social compact to get these audits. And your department, through Deputy Speaker of Local Government, has a role to play in guiding municipalities with appropriate information technology to develop these land audits so we can incorporate those in the IDPs before the budgets are adopted and actually release land starting in this year. The tension that is caused is because there's no transparency. There are all sorts of deals like in Swartland where the RCFF suddenly got hold of a piece of land where the mayor's wife was on the RCFF, all of this kind of thing. So let's be open, let's release the land. And also well-located private land. We take Paradise Park in Hermanus. They are historically so-called white poor people living. And here you have a developer who wants to simply come in and remove their properties. And what we are saying, that's a perfect case for expropriation so that that land in the middle and close to Hermanus can be used for integrated human settlements for all those who need it, whether they are white, African or colored. That's why we need this legislation. And the longer we undermine the land, the dispossession of land in this country, the more we're actually going to find that we do not achieve the equality. And these are the important things that local government can actually get involved in. Then we talk about the Traditional and Khoisan Leadership Act. I want to remind this House, Deputy Speaker, that the Democratic Alliance voted against this legislation in Parliament. Let me remind you, the DA stood against the Khoi and the San people in the National Assembly. They voted against this legislation. Now it's been signed into law by our president, and we have to
your time is up.
And we must do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There was a bit of mix mash there about different departments, but I will accept that. Thank you very much, Honourable Dugmore. We now move to Honourable Makamba Botia.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. To Honourable Dugmore, I just want to say that the ANC is actually doing this very same thing that the EFF is doing, invading land. So I don't know why he's coming here and making accusations to the EFF. Deputy Speaker, the Department of Local Government, with its oversight role, has a duty to make sure that the province has well-governed municipalities. However, in the Western Cape, whilst other municipalities are prioritized by the DA-led provincial government, others are neglected. Towards the end of 2021, Beaufort West, Cedarburg, Canaland, and Matsikama municipalities were all indebted to Eskom to the tune of close to 80 million. Instead of the local government minister intervening in these municipalities with this aim to assist them to comply with the good financial governance, his response was to effect that all those municipalities are not under the DA governance and therefore they should be neglected. But it's strange that the minister could say that as if they do not have a constituency of DA in those specific municipalities. So under the leadership of MEC Anton Bredel, society must know that municipalities are not going to be treated the same by his DA-led provincial government. The problem with this level of short-sightedness.
Honourable Member, 1 minute, if you can just take a seat. Honourable Bosman, is that a new hand?
Yes, it is, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I'm not sure if my sound failed me, but I just want a point of clarity. Did the Honourable Makamba Botia say that the EFF and the ANC are both invading land?
I would have to check the Hansard, Honourable Bosman. Unfortunately, I would not be able to clarify that as yet until I've checked the Hansard. Thank you very much. That's not a point of order. Honourable Makamba Botia, you may continue.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Society trusts the department with taxpayers' money in order to make sure that all municipalities are well governed, irrespective of which party governs which municipality. Providing resources and assistance to municipalities along skewed lines based on party political patronage equals to abduction of duty. And what should then follow is the minister resigning, as they are no longer capable of executing their duties in a fair, trustworthy, and professional manner. Communities must not suffer due to the incapability and negligence of a minister who cannot run his department. The Minister of Local Government cannot be trusted with the proper utilization of taxpayers' money, and therefore the EFF Deputy Speaker will not be in support of this vote. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I see you, Honourable Bryn Case. Are you next on the list? You are speaking.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I will not speak on this vote.
Okay, thank you very much. I now recognise order. I now recognise Honourable Botha.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I shall do my own point of order. Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition has a short memory. Cederberg still owes a presentation to this House Standing Committee. Where was he? Cederberg still owes a report to a Standing Committee of this Parliament. Where was he? And then, in regard to the Impact Chair, Cederberg, when the ANC was in government, the Impact Chair was an ANC member. Where was he? So, and then I do not even talk about Cederberg that has been managed by the Secretary General in the West Coast. Where was the Honourable Leader of the Opposition? Deputy Speaker, the President recently said during that very, very significant week that we endured in this country, and I quote, "The fact that they, firefighters and emergency services, were here in a short space of time is something that we should be grateful for. That we do have one city that works, and we do have a province that works, and we do have a government that works when the chips are down." Close quote. Honourable Deputy Speaker, that is the President of our country who said that, who is also the President of the ANC. Viva President. You saw what the DA can do in this country. I rise to speak on vote 14, local government. The allocated funds towards the Department of Local Government's budget are valued at 309,301,000 rand. I said it better than the previous President, Honourable Leader of the Opposition, which is a slight decrease from the previous financial year. The reason for this decrease is due to the decreased funds the province has received from the national government. But despite this reduction, I have full confidence in this Western Cape Provincial Government, local government department, that it will continue to deliver on its mandates and serve the people of our province in a significant way. The budget for the upcoming financial year will focus on monitoring performances in our local municipalities. A key driver of strengthening service delivery is strong checks and balances to ensure that municipalities are held accountable. This should include Cederberg and the Beaufort West. It is crucial that the department continues to monitor, cooperate, and provide support to municipalities as they transition following the local government elections and, in many cases, intense coalition processes. The 15 million rand allocation towards assisting our municipalities for successful transition is welcome, Deputy Speaker. This will help us build strong and well-run municipalities as we have done in the past. Speaker, this previous election season has introduced to the province a number of new councillors who are young and with magnificent potential. The department will also be providing them with the necessary guidance and support to ensure they succeed in their new roles and responsibilities. 20.6 million rand has been allocated to reinforce municipal support interventions. The department will be present to provide hands-on support to local governments in this province. These interventions are necessary for pushing forward local governments that can produce reliable and efficient services to our people. To assist new councillors transition into the local government sphere, the department will provide capacity building for them to be able to address critical areas of governance and to strengthen oversight. The department will also engage councillors on provincial legislation to enhance the ideals of good governance in the Western Cape. The department's commitments to strengthening oversight and public participation must be commended. To this end, 17.5 million rand has been allocated to further enhance public participation. Municipalities over the medium term will have more funds to initiate programs that enhance activity citizenry. Strong governments are built where citizens are at the core and are actively engaged. I am proud to see the department planning and funding more of these programs. Deputy Speaker, it is no secret that municipalities have played a critical role in supporting the province's recovery plan from the effects of the global pandemic. The Municipal Infrastructure Grant has specifically driven the lead role in this regard by creating many job opportunities. The department will once again continue with these projects in the new financial year. The community work programs in particular have assisted in driving economic recovery and development. Approximately 17,700 jobs have been created through the CWPs, and this has brought significant relief to many families as well as young people who have benefited from this initiative. Many have gained work experience through CWPs and have turned out more employable in the outside world where they will seek permanent employment. South Africa has been straddled with a record high unemployment rate, especially among our young people. While the job opportunities created by the CWP are not permanent, we recognize the role this initiative plays towards bringing relief to those who are in need and upskilling the unemployed within our Western Cape province. Strengthening governance in municipalities is important for building towns and cities that attract investment. This upcoming financial year, we trust that the work of the Western Cape Provincial Government and the department will create cities and municipalities that will attract businesses and investment. Deputy Speaker, I want to encourage our local municipalities to support local business to the best of their ability and with available resources. Also for municipalities to strengthen the platform of local economic development. There are many ways in which local governments can create an environment for businesses to thrive. For example,
Order member. I know your colleague has been distracted.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. For example, the City of Cape Town has recently announced that it opened the first round for independent power producers in order to procure 300 megawatt of renewable energy. This is not only a move towards energy independence, but also highlights how a capable government can build environments to attract investors. Deputy Speaker, I am encouraged by the Western Cape Government's plans to attract more investors through upgrading existing infrastructure and embarking on further infrastructure development projects, which will ultimately contribute to addressing the scourge of unemployment and create an environment for businesses to operate efficiently. Deputy Speaker, we must acknowledge the role Tusong centres continue to play in bringing government services to our communities. These centres ensure that government works for all its citizens by ensuring that people have access to services that may have been difficult for them to access under normal circumstances. The centres also host various outreach and training workshops, as well as clinic services in some instances. These have proven to be effective as the number of people attending the centres continue to increase. I therefore welcome the initiative shown by the provincial government to utilise the centres to assist in combating the scourge of GBV in our province. The department has indicated that it will further strengthen its working relationship with the Department of Social Development to implement GBV programs at all our Tusong centres. With cases of GBV in the country on the rise, initiatives like these are important for building awareness and ultimately saving lives. The budget allocation increasing under Programme 2 by 57% from the 2021-22 financial year is welcomed. This increase is due to the additional funds that have been allocated for project management support to be given to the Sustainable Infrastructure Development and Finance Facility programs. The department has allocated 3 million rand towards our SIDA-FF programs. This will play an important role in shoring up infrastructure development in the province's secondary cities, as well as boosting economic development. The department last month, the path toward recovery for the Beaufort West municipality was approved. I'm pleased to see the cooperation from both the municipality and the department to get Beaufort West finances back on track. This cooperation will hopefully pave the way towards bringing financial stability and sustainable service delivery to Beaufort West. Speaker, I'd like to pause and also ask the Minister to give, if he can, a status update on the Cederberg-Matsikama finances within that municipality. Deputy Speaker, the 20% increase for disaster management is welcomed, as well as the 5.3 million rand allocated towards upgrading the Disaster Management Centre. I would also like to thank our firefighting teams in the province for their hard work and dedication during the recent fire season on the West Coast. Without their never-ending commitment on the ground, we would have seen more harm. The additional 2 million rand for the fire strategy this year to increase and strengthen capacity for fire services is therefore very welcomed. As noted by the President, following the fire at the National Parliament, Western Cape Fire officials conduct their work speedily, professionally, and with great commitment. And as the Minister alluded in his speech, also the accolade for receiving an award. Deputy Speaker, the Western Cape has consistently ranked at the top when it comes to the performance of local governments. Ratings Africa last year revealed that the top performing local municipalities in South Africa are from the Western Cape. And maybe, Deputy Speaker, the leader of the opposition did not hear me. Ratings Africa last year revealed that the top performing local municipalities in South Africa are from the Western Cape province. Local government is at the coalface of service delivery. And while we have seen numerous changes in this arena as a result of the newly formed coalition governments, I have full confidence that the department will closely monitor and strengthen these governments. The department, or this department, plays an important role in ensuring that local government remain consistent in providing quality service delivery to residents, continue to foster an environment for economic growth and job creation, and strengthens good practices. Speaker, I thank the HOD of this department. I am new to this role as the Standing Committee Chair, but I trust that we will foster as the Standing Committee a relationship with this department. Speaker, it is due to commitments by this department that municipalities in this province continue to outperform municipalities across the country. I believe that this budget will further strengthen local governments in the upcoming financial year. I also want to pay homage to all mayors, some of them who are in the gallery, to all mayors responsible and councillors who are the first in line for coalface service delivery on the ground. And they are often, very often, last to get the accolade they deserve. But when things go wrong, then it is their fault. Deputy Speaker, therefore, the DA supports this budget vote 14. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Minister Bradell.
Baie dankie, agbare Deputy Speaker. Weereens nogal moeilik om te antwoord op die Deputy Speaker, laat ek begin deur vir die agbare Botha te bedank. Sy is wel nie in die portefeulje, maar sy is 'n ou hand. So ja, ek sien uit om saam te werk. Ek weet ook sy is 'n ou juffrou, so sy gaan streng wees met ons. So ons is reg. Ons is altyd reg vir oorsig en goeie interaksie, soos ek altyd sê, ek weet ons harte is op die regte plek. Ons dien ons mense van ons gemeenskap. So ek sien regtig uit daarna om saam te werk en ek wil ook haar voorganger, die agbare Dirk Amerika, bedank vir sy samewerking in die portefeulje. To the Honourable Botha, the Eskom, I think there's a communication problem there. We do support all the municipalities. It's just a trend. If you look at the trend, and I can prove that we treat all the municipalities the same, because currently the Matsikama municipality is run by the DA, and their Eskom account moves in the wrong direction, and we're busy with them. Cedarburg municipality, but that's an interesting story. You know, when the DA took over Cedarburg, they managed the Eskom account down. Then the ANC took over for a short period. Then it jumped to 40 million acres. Now the current mayor is again moving into the right direction. They're moving down with that. So they're adhering to the agreement. We support them, etc., etc. On the ANC run municipalities, I can only pray for them. Honourable Deputy Speaker, aan die agbare Dakmo, ek sou so skaam gewees het om vandag in die huis te praat as ek in die ANC was, dat ek sou decline het, regtig waar. Ek sou decline het, want die gemors van hierdie land se ekonomie is, lê op een party se skouers en dis die ANC. En ek weet nie, ek hoor ek is oud vandag, dan is hy hardhorend, want daai boodskap kry hy tog net nie. 9 jaar lank het hulle die Zuma faksie ondersteun, wat hierdie land in die afgrond in bestuur het, mense tot 'n skamele 350 rand bestuur het, agbare Speaker, mense is tot 'n skamele 300 rand, loop staan in 'n queue, in 'n plek soos Oudtshoorn, 2000 mense, hulle het al mekaar met 'n mes doodgesteek in die queue, dis wat die ANC aan mense doen, agbare Speaker, so, ja, ek weet nie die obsessie wat die agbare Dakmor het met die stad Kaapstad nie, en ek het hom al geantwoord, so hopelik kan hy sukkel om die antwoord te hoor, so ons gee maar weer die antwoord. Die stad het 'n regsopinie gekry. Ons het nie saamgestem in die regsopinie, ek was ook ongelukkig op die regsopinie, ons het 'n senior advokaat se opinie gekry, en die opinie is baie duidelik. Ek mors nie geld agter die ANC aan nie, julle het die stemme gekry nie. ANC het die stemme gekry nie, hoeveel stemme het hulle in die stad gekry? 12.
Jy is bang vir die stad Kaapstad.
Order members, 1 minute, Honourable Minister, if you can just wait. Please, Honourable members online, if I note that you are shouting over the microphone, you will be muted. Please, can we have some order? Thank you. Honourable Minister, you may proceed.
Agbare Deputy Speaker, daar's 'n regsopinie wat baie duidelik is, waar ek nie oorsig het nie, hoef die munisipaliteit nie die vraag te antwoord nie. En dit maak sin, jy kan dit debatteer, maar dit maak sin, want die ANC het tog sekere raadslid of 2 in die stad wat 'n vraag kan formuleer. Nou vra die vraag dan daar, dis wat die regsopinie sê. Vra jou vraag daar waar jy verteenwoordiging het. So as hulle nie verteenwoordiging daar het nie, dan sal ons 'n ander plan maak en sal ons maar vra of daar ander partye is wat namens hulle die vraag kan vra. So, agbare Speaker, ek verstaan nie lekker wide scale corruption. Die agbare Dakmo het dan toegesê hy het dit SIU gegee. Dis presies, as enige een van hierdie lede weet van korrupsie, moet hulle saak gaan maak. Anders is ons deel daarvan. So, laat ons kyk wat daarvan gebeur. Hy noem dan die burgemeester en die ANC raadslede. Ek weet nie lekker waantoe hy stuur nie. Hy probeer nou 'n wig indryf tussen die vorige en die nuwe burgemeester. Maar hulle kan enige tyd vir die burgemeester in die stadse raad vra. Daar's 'n sessie vir vra. So hulle kan dit net gebruik. Jy sien, die agbare dakmog fokus vreeslik op die DA. Ek weet nie hoekom nie. Of hy 'n nuwe tuiste gaan soek na hy kongresie, maar hy gaan nie welkom wees nie. So hy hoef nie, ons worry glad nie, ons sê dit nee. Nee is 'n baie mooi antwoord.
Order members.
So dit is een van daardie dinge, maar ja, miskien moet hy maar fokus op sy eie party. Fokus maar daarop, maar daai party is nie redbaar nie. Hy noem dan 'n klomp name en dis lekker, dis hartseer dat ons vryheid van spraak gebruik om op mense se lewens te probeer trap. Die huidige persoon wie hy se naam hy genoem het, is nie aangestel nie, want die DA het gesê dit werk nie so nie. Ek verstaan, ek wil ook nie hê dat die agbare dakmog of die ANC moet probeer verstaan nie, want hulle verstaan nie dissipline nie. Hulle verstaan nie die woord integriteit nie. So wanneer ek skryf vir 'n DA en al my DA, is dit paar DA burgemeesters. Hulle weet, ons sê dit altyd aan ons oplei ook. Ons gaan baie strenger wees met 'n DA burgemeester, want ons meet julle aan 'n hoër standaard, want dit skuld ons die publiek. As die ANC burgemeester, hoekom moet ek my bekommer daaroor? So wanneer 'n DA raad 'n komitee wat onderhoude doen, se verslag bespreek, 'n DA caucus, is daar 'n probleem. Ek het 'n probleem daarmee. En ja, skuldig bevind daaroor en ek hou by my standpunt. Dit hoort nie in 'n politieke caucus 'n aanstelling. Agbare dalk ons het nooit verstaan, hy sal altyd probeer draai en aangaan wat hy hard hoor. So, agbare speaker. So dit is waar dit is. En ons gaan aan. Sy vraag wat hy, sy direkte vraag wat die agbare dakmog my gevra het, hoeveel mense het ek opdrag gekry om aan te stel? Niks. Die antwoord is baie eenvoudig, so hy kan skryf en hy kan paai tot hy blou is. Dan, agbare speaker, die ekonomiese klimaat, ek sal glad nie daaroor praat as ek hy is. Het is eintlik so hartseer, dat na COVID, kyk wat het iets so Cape Nature reg gekry. 60% groei en hierdie land kon sy ekonomie kon ontplof het. Maar dit is ongelukkig niks oor nie, want die ANC het hom bestuur tot, daar net klip en sand oor is. Daar is regtig nie een plantjie oor nie. So die hele kwessie van impact het ek geantwoord, en weer eens, hy het seker kollegas op nasionaal wat weet hoe om wetgewing te skryf. Maak dit dan 'n verpligting. Ek het nie 'n probleem dat oppositie, ek dink dis reg as oppositie het moet wees, maar as jy sulke swak kwaliteit raadslede dan stuur na rade toe en hulle die vrymoedigheid om te sê, luister, ons gaan dan iemand sit wat 'n balansstaat kan lees wat in die stoel sit, dan is dit nou maar ook so. En ongelukkig die rade wat hy noem, moet hy maar gaan kyk na, al wat hy moet gaan kyk is na hulle bestuursrekord. En nie wat ek sê nie, gaan kyk wat onafhanklike studies sê. Die rade wat hy noem is van die best bestuurde rade in die land. Maar die ANC sal dit nooit verstaan nie. Agbare speaker, deputy speaker, ek sal die geld daarop wet wat ek nie het nie, dat hier kom 'n kongres by die ANC. Na daai kongres gaan die ANC weer nog 'n taakspan hê. Hulle gaan nie 'n verkiesing hê nie. Hulle gaan nog 'n taakspan in die lewe roep. So ek wil tog vra vir die mense wat persele verhuur in die Kaap, sorg net dat julle geld voor die tyd kry. Want as jy SARS nie kan betaal nie, as jy mense se pensioengeld in sy UIF geld, ek wil, agbare, dis 'n skande. Dis 'n skande. En dan wil jy 'n land bestuur. Dis geen wonder ons mense vervalle armoede nie. Is geen wonder die werkloosheidssyfer is oor 50% nie. Agbare speaker, weer eens, moet die spanamptenare in die Wes-Kaap, sal ek oorlog toe gaan. Die spanamptenare in die Wes-Kaap speel nie politiek nie. Hulle doen hulle uiterste bes, hulle sal foute maak, want ons is almal mense. Al wanneer daar politiek is, wanneer die ANC sal politiek maak daarvan. My amptenare ken my, hulle weet ek speel nie politiek nie, ek onderskei tussen staat en party, want aan die einde van die dag dien ek die mense van my gemeenskap. Ons dien nie party nie. Dankie.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. That concludes the debate vote 14. Before we continue, I'm just going to allow the officials to leave the chambers. Thank you very much. Minister, are we waiting? Okay. The Secretary, thank you. The Secretary will now read the fifth order of the day.
Debate on vote 10, Transport and Public Works, Western Cape Appropriation Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I now recognize Minister Mitchell.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Premier, Cabinet colleagues, Chairperson and other members of the Standing Committee, Honourable members, the Head of the Department and senior officials, members of the media, citizens of the Western Cape. Given the fact that the second adjustment budget for the vote 10 is limited to one item, I'm sure that the members will understand, Deputy Speaker, if I table and deal with this matter right up front before I move on to vote 10 of the budget, because I think it's important that I just table and speak to that. The second adjustment budget consists of an amount of 43,396 rand from the Provincial Road Maintenance Grant reallocated to the Western Cape by the National Treasury for the original allocation to various underperforming provinces. This amount has been redirected to the following project: the reseal of the Ashton-Swellendam Road in the Cape Winelands, the reseal of the N2 near Verliesdorp in the Overberg, the reseal of Hooggaten in the Garden Route, and therefore, Honourable Deputy Speaker, I table it for consideration. Speaker, I now turn to the 2022-2023 budget vote for vote 10. I do so against the backdrop of what my Cabinet colleague, the Minister of Finance, in tabling the provincial budget on the 14th of March, referred on more than one occasion to as the budget to push forward. He tabled a budget which reflected the courage shown by this Western Cape government in tackling a string of challenges which we have all, as government and as citizens of this province, faced down in recent years from the COVID pandemic, through poor economic growth and job losses, to the inability of the national government to prove essential services for which it and its poorly run state-owned enterprises are responsible. Deputy Speaker, Minister Mania's budget to push forward is not a backward-looking, feeling sorry for ourselves budget. It is a budget which looks ahead with a positive vision of what the Western Cape can be and what it can do for its people. And so, Deputy Speaker, this budget to push forward as a government allocates over the MTEF, amongst others, the following: 19.6 billion rand for jobs, 4.4 billion rand for safety, 111.3 billion rand for well-being, and 30.3 billion rand for infrastructure. Deputy Speaker, I highlight these specific aspects of the budget to push forward because the Department of Transport and Public Works is directly and materially involved in each one of these critical areas of the Western Cape government's vision. I'm proud of the extensive range of vital activities covered by my department. And as a result, as I visited the various districts in the Western Cape, I've been able to see evidence of the contributions made by my department to improving the lives of the people in the Western Cape, whether in the form of a new or improved school, more accessible health facilities, upgrading of youth care centres, and shared services buildings, Deputy Speaker, which brings the Western Cape government closer to the people. However, Deputy Speaker, it would be a mistake to think that the Department of Transport and Public Works' contribution is only limited to the provision of physical infrastructure and amenities. Ek het byvoorbeeld, Deputy Speaker, nou saam met ons provinsiale verkeersdienste gewerk en het talle padblokkades en ander verkeersveiligheid en wetstoepassingsbedrywighede bygewoon. Ek is die meeste beïndruk, Deputy Speaker, deur die toewyding en die professionaliteit van ons verkeersbeamptes onder allerlei omstandighede. Laat aand, Deputy Speaker, in giere weer onderdruk by ongelukstonele waar hulle gedreig word met fisieke geweld ensovoorts. En hierdie diens word in die belang van ons veiligheid gelewer op 'n 24-uur basis deur die enigste provinsie, Deputy Speaker, waarin verkeerswetstoepassing 24 uur per dag werksaam is. Deputy Speaker, hierdie vroue en mans verdien ons dank en lof. Terselfdertyd, Deputy Speaker, het ons vervoerbeamptes die weg gebaan met die ontwikkeling van geskikte tegnologie om reikwyte van ons verkeersbeamptes uit te brei en om ons kapasiteit om padverkeer en openbare vervoerstelsels te monitor en te bestuur en te verbeter. Deputy Speaker, baie van ons het die geleentheid gehad om die demonstrasies van die vervoernode in werking by te woon en het self die potensiaal wat in huis bestaan vir beter en doeltreffender openbare vervoerbedrywighede te sien. Deputy Speaker, the Integrated Transport Intelligence Hub was established in 2018. The Department of Transport and Public Works aimed to develop a centralized data management system known as the Transportation Data Hub to bring together departmental data streams in a standardized way to support effective land transport decision-making. Deputy Speaker, it was proposed that the branch establish the capacity to perform platform functions across the Western Cape, which would provide the technological systems required to support public transport improvement, including intelligent transport, ticketing, passenger information, and data platforms. There was also a focus on addressing data, regulatory, and enforcement issues in partner municipalities. The Data Hub, Deputy Speaker, created an opportunity through technology interventions to support the core needs of the branch in addressing the following challenges experienced at the time of drafting the original business case. Insufficient capacity and funding for the delivery of improved local transport systems, a lack of comprehensive and good quality data on land transport in municipalities, including poor quality public transport data, the ineffective public transport service, driver and public operator behavior, unsafe and overloaded vehicles, and pedestrian fatalities, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the development of the Data Hub aimed to draw together data resources and create a facility through which land transport planning, licensing, monitoring, operations, regulations, and enforcement can be transformed. Branch users can be empowered through timeous access to integrated, high-quality, reliable, real-time, and historic data. Deputy Speaker, this is a core facility in the extension of our traffic management capacity and the development of integrated, technology-rich public transport. But Deputy Speaker, let me now turn to the budget itself. What are the nuts and the bolts of the overall Vote 10 budget for 2022, 2023 and beyond, which we are here to address this afternoon? The budget for the department for 2022-2023 amounts to 9.0106 billion rand. This constitutes a downward adjustment of 63.112 million rand from the adjusted estimates for 2021-2022. In the two later years of the MTEF, Deputy Speaker, this amounts increase to 9.3 billion rand for the 2023-2024 and to 9.6 billion rand for 2024-2025. Deputy Speaker, the increase referred to are largely the result of an additional road infrastructure allocation to stabilize and better align the budget and projects over the medium term. Deputy Speaker, in my relatively short term in office, I've come to understand how important our road network is to the economy of the Western Cape and to the well-being of our citizens. The availability of additional funds over the MTEF will enable the department and the roads branch in particular to address even more of the challenges facing particularly rural communities and communities dependent on the extensive gravel road network. A network which is vulnerable, Deputy Speaker, to increasingly severe weather conditions, and this details of the entire road network are set out in the Road Asset Management Plan, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I'm delighted to report to this House that since assuming office, I've had the pleasure of visiting and opening a number of important road projects across the province. Amongst these are the Aberdeen Road, or the R61, linking the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape, the Haarskral Road in the Cape Winelands, the Ashton Arch Bridge, Deputy Speaker, a first in South Africa, Oosbos Street in Paarl, in partnership with the Drakenstein municipality. In addition to this, Deputy Speaker, there are currently over 50 large roads projects in construction under the control and management of my department. The following key projects will commence implementation during this coming financial year. The upgrade of MR281, which is Rooihoogte and Draaiberg, periodic maintenance between Klaarstroom to Beaufort West, the upgrade of the Louis Fourie Road in Mossel Bay, the rehabilitation and periodic maintenance of the road between Paarl to Franschhoek, the upgrade and rehabilitation of the road of Protea and Waarbrug Road, and the improvement of MR533 between St. Helena and Stompniesbaai. Deputy Speaker, all these projects are of economic importance and contribute significantly to the integration of communities and to the general mobility needed for a healthy society. Deputy Speaker, in addition, there are numerous projects in the planning and the design phase. But Deputy Speaker, to complete the budget overview, it's necessary to highlight that the Department of Transport and Public Works functions on the basis of 6 programs, each with specific responsibilities. The budget allocation for each of these are as follows. For administration, 252 million rand. Public Works Infrastructure, 2.194 billion rand. Transport Infrastructure, 3.953 billion rand. Transport Operations, 1.7 billion rand. Transport Regulations, 952 million rand. And community-based projects of 67,904 rand. Deputy Speaker, members may also notice that in this budget, specific programs and budget allocations have been set aside as priority allocations. Programs 2, 3, 4, and 5 have been identified as being likely to be impacted by the announcements made by the Premier in regard to changes in the departmental structure of the Western Cape government. Provincial Treasury has instituted specific limitations concerning variaments to and from programs 2 and 3, and such variaments will require prior approval from Provincial Treasury. Deputy Speaker, even variaments between these 2 programs requires the accounting officer to notify the Treasury. Deputy Speaker, at present, the Department of Transport and Public Works is the infrastructure implementing agent for both education and for health, and the department is therefore scheduled in this financial year under discussion to spend an additional amount of 1.364 billion rand on behalf of the Western Cape Education Department and an additional amount of 560 million rand on behalf of the Department of Health. The strategic decisions, Deputy Speaker, about these health and education projects are planned and taken by these 2 various departments and implemented by the Department of Transport and Public Works. Deputy Speaker, I specifically mentioned this existing arrangement as in tabling in the provincial budget on the 14th of March, Minister Mania made the following announcement, and I quote, "We are preparing to withdraw Provincial Treasury Instruction 16B, which will bring much needed competition to the infrastructure space by ensuring that the Department of Transport and Public Works will be the preferred but not the exclusive implementer of infrastructure projects for the Education Department and Health Department in the Western Cape." Close quote. This announcement, Deputy Speaker, has received some media coverage and was last Friday the subject of a media release by my colleague, the Minister of Finance, which stressed that the purpose of the withdrawal, of the intention of the withdrawal of the Provincial Treasury Regulation 16B was to introduce an element of choice and greater competition in the use of implementing agents. As the Minister, Deputy Speaker, currently responsible for supplying the implementing agency function to health and education, I've provided the relevant ministers with an indication of what services are currently being provided by the department in delivering the implementing agency function to their departments. This will enable them to make an informed decision about service choices in the future. As an illustration, Deputy Speaker, the department that delivered the following on behalf of the Western Cape Education Department during the 2021-2022 financial year. 601 capital projects, which includes new facilities, expansions, upgrades, and additions, as well as mobile classrooms. 226 maintenance projects, which includes preventative maintenance, corrective maintenance, scheduled maintenance, as well as ablution and fencing. Deputy Speaker, allow me now to move on or turn over to commuter transport initiatives. Deputy Speaker, Vote 10, as tabled in this House, provides an amount of 70 million rand for the undertaking of a collaborative and orderly winding down and evaluation of the Blue Dot taxi pilot. Over the last year, Deputy Speaker, we have worked tirelessly with the minibus taxi industry on the Blue Dot pilot project to drive behavior change, service quality improvements, and formalization. Deputy Speaker, this is why the violence perpetrated by certain elements within the industry on March the 24th must not completely be misread. The vast majority, Deputy Speaker, of Blue Dot taxis played no part whatsoever in the events of March 24th, and only 2 out of the 8 regions participating in the Blue Dot, currently participating in Blue Dot, namely Kata and Kodeta, were involved in the alleged violence and unrest which occurred on that day. Blue Dot taxis, Deputy Speaker, also found themselves victims of the day's events with at least 18 vehicles damaged or destroyed. Deputy Speaker, it's my firm belief that it's unacceptable actions of these bad elements that should not be used to undermine the hard work and the many successes which have been achieved through Blue Dot over the last year. Deputy Speaker, as the Premier has noted, Blue Dot is a new tool for responding to incidents of violence. After the unacceptable events of the 24th of March, my department immediately placed the regions involved in red status, meaning they were unable to benefit from Blue Dot. This action ensured that there were real consequences for unlawful behavior hitting those involved where it counts, in their pockets. In addition to this, Deputy Speaker, I've implemented a range of regulatory sanctions which I've had at my disposal. Deputy Speaker, I think at this time it's pertinent to remind ourselves that the Blue Dot pilot is not the only successful motorized public transport initiative launched by the Department of Transport and Public Works in the recent years. I want to move on to the George Integrated Public Transport Network. The George Integrated Public Transport Network and the Go George bus service was spearheaded by the Western Cape Department of Transport and Public Works in partnership with the municipality of George through the transformation of the George minibus taxi industry, Deputy Speaker. The George Integrated Public Transport Network was the first non-metro nationally to be awarded the PTNG funding by the National Department of Transport, and to date is one of a handful of non-metros in which a system is operational. The first phase of the GIPTN went live in December 2014 with phase 1, whereafter phase 2 in March 2015, phase 3 in May 2015, and phase 4B in March 2020 were rolled out, with the department targeting the planned rollout of the next phase in Thembaletu, which is phase 4A, in the 3rd financial quarter of this year. Deputy Speaker, the current operational services service approximately 14,000 average weekday passengers monitored from September 2021 to February 2022. Following the impact of COVID-19, in February 2022, the service had 16,096 weekday passengers recorded, their highest yet, with a 56% of households within 500 meters, Deputy Speaker, of a Go George service. With the rollout of phase 4A, this service will cater for approximately 26,000 average weekday passengers, with 78% of households estimated to be within a 500 meter of a Go George service. Deputy Speaker, recently the George municipality obtained an interdict against attempts by certain elements of the minibus taxi industry to disrupt this service. My department will support the legal actions initiated by the municipality to protect the valuable public transport asset which serves the people of George. Deputy Speaker, I think it's important to highlight that. Municipalities, as the planning authorities, are responsible for determining the supply and the demand, and I believe that this must be done in a more proactive manner by all municipalities. Deputy Speaker, this is something that must be addressed as a result of the current B97 route conflict. Deputy Speaker, in addition, I will initiate a reassessment of the overall regulatory regime for public transport, where it is within my competence to do so in order to ensure that it is in line with the changing circumstances. Deputy Speaker, in the same manner, I recently approved changes to criteria for the certification of vehicle testing stations to accommodate shifting economic and population realities. This can open further business opportunities. Deputy Speaker, not all commuter transport arrangements have to be large scale in order to make a difference to the lives of the people that we serve. I want to turn to the Provincial Sustainable Transport Program, which was initiated by the Department of Transport and Public Works to support the development and implementation of sustainable transport system in the Western Cape. The program aims to develop transport systems through forming partnerships with key stakeholders, including with local municipalities, communities, and businesses. Deputy Speaker, the first such partnership was established between the department and Stellenbosch municipality as far back as 2016. We currently have similar partnership with the Overstrand and Swartland municipalities. The focus, Deputy Speaker, is on improving the conditions for walking and cycling. Within the Western Cape non-metro areas, 35% of people walk to work as their primary mode of transport, and 46% of learners walk to school. Our bicycle distribution program, of which I had the privilege of being part of, has been an instant success, and the benefits to the communities involved have been immediate. Deputy Speaker, finally, I want to commend my department through its government motor transport trading entity for the far-thinking development of an electric vehicle strategy. This strategy, Deputy Speaker, will enable the Western Cape government to play a leading role in developments in this critical area, an area which will become of even greater importance in the light of climate change challenges. Deputy Speaker, projects which have been identified in some cases already implemented include the procurement and testing of 13 electric vehicles, the planning of a provincial electric vehicle charging network, research into the conversion of existing vehicles to electric vehicles, battery recycling and repurposing opportunities, the development of technology management platforms, and a 3-phase, 5-year implementation plan, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, these visionary developments can only be to the benefit of the economy and the well-being of the people of this province and beyond. Deputy Speaker, in closing, I would like to thank my cabinet colleagues, the members of the standing committee with which we work, the members of the House, and the excellent hard-working HOD of my department, as well as the staff, some of whom are in attendance online today. Deputy Speaker, it would be remiss of me not to acknowledge the contribution and to say thanks to my ministry staff under the leadership of Mr. Clive Roos. Thank you very, very much to every single member of my staff and team. Thank you very much for being there and for assisting with putting together my first budget speech. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister. I now recognise Honourable Mimbi.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Good afternoon to you, the Premier, the Leader of the Opposition, and all the honourable members. The ANC declined support for this budget, Honourable Deputy Speaker. However, before I spell out the reason why we declined the support, allow me to thank the Honourable America, who is the chairperson of the Standing Committee, in the manner in which he has also chaired the committee so far, but also for his generosity for also allowing the Honourable Mackenzie, who is the previous chairperson, to also participate in this budget speech. Otherwise, he wouldn't have another opportunity of participating. Honourable Deputy Speaker, it is customary for us to commence a speech by quoting either President Ramaphosa, a national minister, or an aspect on the subject, but today I want to commence my intervention in this budget vote by reiterating the point made by Ms. Bulelwa Mayende, a member of the public and a leader of Sanko in Danun, who attended and participated in the Standing Committee's deliberation on the budget vote. Ms. Mayende expressed her deep dissatisfaction by the way the poor in this province and in her community are treated. She conveyed how she believes this provincial government and the city of Cape Town undermine and trembles on the right of the people living in communities such as Danun. This budget does not speak to the reality of the lives of our people living in such places as Danun, insisted Ms. Mayende. Taxis, a form of transport used exclusively by poor people, are being impounded, said Ms. Mayende. She had to come and hear that in the committee that there are no PRA or permits backlogs. Yet she knows of at least 57 instances where operators are waiting for their permits due to so-called backlogs. Deputy Speaker, unfortunately, the Honorable Chairperson who was chairing the meeting, Honorable America, who I've just paid tribute to and thanked, made a very unfortunate remark in response to Ms. Mayende. He said to Ms. Mayende and the representative from Danun Taxi Association that their comments were not in relation to the budget. If anything, as Ms. Mayende herself said, this budget that the committee was discussing does not speak to the reality of our people's lives. The sentiment expressed by Ms. Mayende and experienced by hundreds of thousands, if not millions of our people across our province speak to a complete disconnect between the DA provincial government administration and the poor. In fact, her sentiments speak to very disconnect between this budget and our communities. Yet even more so, it speaks to DA's inability to govern this province. Take, for example, the fact that according to the AHOD of the department, the IRT or PRT models in this province have all but collapsed. For a provincial government who continuously demand competencies over rail and ports, this government cannot even govern and manage the #1 public transport industry in our province at the moment, which is the taxis. The IRT or PRT model has collapsed because the DA treats taxis like children and does not see them as equal partners contributing a considerable amount to the provincial GDP. Continuously, the National Transport Minister must, whenever there are crises in the province, he must run and come to the rescue of the department and the MEC. For months, if not years, my city could not run between Khayelitsha, Mitchells Plain, and the CBD because the DA has an inability to govern. That is to bring parties around the table and negotiate. And I hope that with this recent protests that the taxi industry has had, we are not again going to have the national minister having to come and intervene in this crisis. No, for the DA, it's either their way or the highway. They are still having the bus mentality. So what does the DA prefer? What is their model of public transport? Firstly, they want the rail system so that they can privatize it. Secondly, they wish to continue heavily subsidizing Golden Arrow, which is a private company. Finally, they want to develop their own companies such as My City and Go George, all because they want to ignore the taxi, which is the #1 public transport industry in the country. In fact, they want to do away from the taxis. They call the taxi operators with all kinds of names that they are instigating violence when they are protesting for their rights. They even call them as hooligans, the instigators. They describe them as destructive and chaotic. Instead of respecting these operators who contribute to the provincial economy, instead of being disappointed in them because of the failure of this provincial government, in any case, to issue permits and treating them like children with carrot and stick operations. Golden Arrow in my city does not operate on an incentive schemes. Why must the taxis then operate on an incentive scheme like the Blue Dot? Honorable Deputy Speaker, it will seem that we seem to have had an ally in the Transport Standing Committee, myself and Honorable Nkondlo, in the person of Honorable Maseko. Because sometimes Honorable Maseko asks the right and pointed question. The Honorable Maseko has been right in asking the department about the engagement between the department and the taxi. Hopefully, when it's coming from one of their own, they are going to start listening on the cries of the taxis and the taxi industry. Honorable Maseko is further correct in demanding that our communities must have a public transport system that works for them. She is also right about the lack of capacity in the city of Cape Town, but we will get to that in a moment. Yet to make matters worse, this department itself does not know whether the Blue Dot, which is the carrot and stick operation, is going to continue or not, as just the minister has just pronounced that they are busy with the process of winding it down. In other words, we will be back to square one insofar as working with the taxi association are concerned if we lose Blue Dot, despite our reservation about this program of Blue Dot. Blue Dot is considered more sustainable by the government, by the department, but the same department does not know if Blue Dot will continue to exist or it will be expanded. Despite the public transport operations grants being firmly in place, taxis, which is the largest provider of public transport to the workers of this province and the only source of public transport to our poor communities, they are not being taken serious by the department. We are still nowhere towards the near subsidization of the taxis required to boost our public transport system, but the DA-led provincial government worries about trains and ports. The DA is still nowhere near caring about public transport on our roads. A question was asked about the department's ability to map and plan where the increase in population will take place, where the human settlements vis-a-vis the economic hubs will be, and where the increase in road traffic or routes will be. This bold, often interpreted plan for transport and sketching scenarios for the future is kicked to municipalities by the provincial department. The department throws its hands up in the air and says that increased population, new human settlements, and therefore new route is the duty of municipalities. Instead, the department says they act according to the municipal plan, and this plan explains the public transport crisis in this DA-led provincial government. It means that our people will continue to suffer because they have a provincial government who just simply cannot govern and work with the city of Cape Town. They don't want to work with the taxis and work with all the stakeholders in ensuring an effective public transport system. But of course, herein lies the challenge, Deputy Speaker. There is no political will, both from the DA-led province or the DA-led city of Cape Town, or the DA-led Drakensberg municipality for that matter, to enlarge the pies to strengthen the public transport system. For the DA, the taxi market must sort out the taxi problems. For the DA, it is better to shift concentration to rail and ports and not to resolve the issue of the taxi industry, because if they could have their way, they will do away with the taxis altogether. It is this market-based ideology that also governs this department's co-source model. 56 million rand has been appropriated for consultant in program 1, which is administration, a non-core function of this department. When further asked about consultants, we are told that this department has always had a co-source model. In other words, outsource, make the state smaller, don't upskill the state and don't retain skill, especially skills in infrastructure. Talking about infrastructure, my colleagues in the ANC were very excited when the Premier announced the new infrastructure department, because Gauteng also has an infrastructure department, and SIM, the Premier, is learning a thing or two from Gauteng. But now our hopes have been dashed when we heard that we must still wait a whole year before this announcement is implemented. But it is also in infrastructure that we seem to be again agreeing with Honorable Maseko when he joined in the discussion. Maybe we know why he might have not been made part of the debate, and then another member has been put instead. You see, Honorable Deputy Speaker, if the Honorable was going to speak here, she was going to point out, like she did in the Standing Committee, how the APP indicates that 61% of this department budget goes to infrastructure. It is also worth repeating in this what the Honorable Member said in the Standing Committee. It is worth also repeating it here today. How he raised a serious lack of capacity in the city of Cape Town when it comes to infrastructure. The city of Cape Town delays project, especially in regard to the better living model, and the fund from the USDG is continuously returned and returned all the time. But a bit of infrastructure that the ANC will be particularly interested in is the planning and eventual, to use the words of the HOD, which, when I quote, generate broad benefit from Leeuwenhof. This is an interesting development, Honorable Deputy Speaker, because we have seen private fundraising events being advertised and this event taking place at Leeuwenhof. And so while we may support charities, we must remember the clear line between the private use or private gain of a public resource, which is Leeuwenhof. If Leeuwenhof is open for fundraising, then we must certainly ask that it be also open to all organizations who wish to raise funds there. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the ANC welcomed the department's engagement with Minister Patel and the National Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, especially in respect of local content and the specifics of local content and procurement. The ANC will always encourage a cooperative model of governance and trust that the new MEC for community safety, if the department still exists next year, will work more cooperatively with his national counterpart. It is in that regard that the ANC cannot distance itself from sentiments of Ms. Mayende, and therefore it is for that reason that we decline support for this budget, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. I now recognise Honourable Mackenzie.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Minister Mitchell, for your budget. Indeed, a great budget speech, and congratulations on your almost first year in service. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I'm going to try and be diplomatic as possible. And because I don't attack people personally, but so I'm rather going to quote former President Thabo Mbeki, who said 2 weeks ago, the ANC must improve the quality of their thinking. He further went on to say the problem with the ANC in the Western Cape, they don't have a capacity to think.
If you can just take your seat.
Yeah.
Chair, I rise on 2 points of order, Chair. The first one is I've noticed that Honourable Mackenzie spoke directly to the MEC. That's number one. Number two, just not a point of order, but caution in terms of relevance, Deputy Speaker.
No, Honourable, Honourable Dugmore, this relevance thing has been very fluid across the House today, but I shall watch Honourable Mackenzie carefully.
Like I said, I'm quoting rather the end in response to Member Mbimbi. I'd rather quote their own leaders.
We'll watch carefully and please.
I'll be diplomatic. I'll be
me.
diplomatic. Let me just manage my time, Deputy Speaker.
One would just please address me. Thank you very
Deputy
much.
Speaker.
There we go.
I'll be diplomatic. So as former President Thabo Mbeki, who said 2 weeks ago, the ANC Western Cape must improve the quality of their thinking. His exact words actually said there should be a capacity to think of the ANC Western Cape. And he further said he don't see the members who think in this room. He was addressing the ANC forum 2 weeks ago. The members who think are not in this room today. There's actually a video clip available on TikTok bizarrely. I don't know who posted it on TikTok. But anyway, and he said comrades should be asking themselves if they are fit for the job. Now the members, this is former President Thabo Mbeki. Now the members in the House are the highest members of the ANC in the Western Cape. And this is a former president addressing their former quorum. This is a damning indictment of the poor quality of leadership. And Honorable Mbimbi, who is a member of Standard Public Works and Transport for many years, would have raised a matter as simple as the DA want the taxi industry to fail. Yet he's been a member. He was here in this House when we invited the taxi industry to the meeting. He was present when Minister Mitchell and the taxi leadership Santako in this parliament. He spoke for nearly 20 minutes. He spoke for 30 seconds on the rail that has collapsed in the province because of the ANC. That is the quality of leadership former President Thabo Mbeki is about. So let me repeat what he said. The ANC in the Western Cape must improve the quality of their thinking. They are not fit for the job. Honourable, so we won't be taking advice from the ANC on anything, Honourable Deputy Speaker. We welcome the 9.1 billion rand allocated to this Department of Public Works as part of the budget to push forward. The budget is set against the background of declining revenue due to the ANC that left this government fiscus in tatters. We should thank Minister Mitchell for steering the ship and dealing with a difficult period during the taxi violence. It's almost a year since he's been in office and his hard work has been appreciated. I also want to express, Honourable Deputy Speaker, our thoughts and prayers of the victims of taxi violence. We have witnessed again recently how taxi violence has flared up, and we all know that more than 88 people were killed during the height of taxi violence last year with limited convictions. Honourable members, and that is the sad part, because not once did Member Mbimbi, via you, who's a member of the committee, or any member of the ANC, raise the issue about the poor conviction rate of the taxi murders in this country. 88 people were murdered. 3% conviction rate. Not once did the ANC say, let's march to the office of our National Director of Western Cape Public Prosecutions. Let's march to the National Director of Public Prosecutions in Parliament. No justice for the victims. The ANC must improve the quality of their thinking. Honourable members, it is appalling that the NPA continues to fail to prosecute people for these heinous crimes. A young child was shot. Not once did the ANC raise the issue about it. Minister Mitchell was on the ground. Minister Mitchell consistently throughout the province traveled to engage with the taxi industry. We appreciate that other people came on board, the latecomers, laatkomers het ingekom to take over, come and take pictures with the media. But I know as fact, because I met with Minister Mitchell with the taxi industry in Mitchell's Plain. He was on the ground meeting with the people with the height of the pandemic. We saw last week, Honourable Deputy Speaker, the violence caused by the rogue elements of the taxi industry. 4 million rand worth of damage. And I sincerely hope my colleague JP Smith, of which the members of this parliament have sleepless nights about, will go and lay charges for those 4 million rand damages can be recouped by the city of Cape Town. And we hope that the National Prosecution Authority will actually prosecute those individuals responsible. Honourable Deputy Speaker, there is a sustainable solution. With the 30 seconds. The sustainable solution, Honourable Dugmore, by you, Deputy Speaker, is the criminals in the taxi industry must be prosecuted. The taxi industry is a great industry. They provide an incredible service for hundreds and thousands of commuters, not only in Cape Town, in the Western Cape, but in the country. But if you don't criminalize, prosecute the criminals in the taxi industry, nothing will happen. The same way you don't prosecute the criminals in the state capture, nothing will happen. They will continue to steal and steal and steal. That is the solution by you, Honorable Dagmo. And it's bizarre that Honorable Mvimbi, who's been a member of the committee for many years, can indicate it is, and I know him as a member who enjoys reading, that he didn't read in the report. It says there, they've allocated 70 million rand funding for the blue dot system. How he can manage to say there's no money available, it is bizarre, because I know him as a member who loves reading. The ANC must improve the quality of their thinking. Honorable Deputy Speaker, Deputy Speaker via you, I was there when Minister Mitchell opened that beautiful Ashton Beach and the Premier. This concrete bridge was the first using the transversal launch method in the Western Cape, and I think it's in the country actually, the first transversal, and it's the quality of infrastructure that the Western Cape government continue to build. And we want to thank all the contractors, the subcontractors, the community of Ashton, and the suppliers to build this great bridge. And we'll continue to ask Minister Mitchell and his team to continue with investing in infrastructure, because that's what this Western Cape government is famous for, and that's what we will continue to support our colleague, Honorable Dale Mitchell. Honorable Deputy Speaker, via you, last week I took a businessman around Mitchell's Plain to show him the rail infrastructure, or the lack of rail infrastructure. He was shocked to see the devastating impact on rail, because he wanted to build a call center in Mitchell's Plain. Because he was saying, how's people going to get to work? And I explained to him, the rail has been destroyed by the ANC. Honorable Mvimbi again mentioned earlier on by you, Deputy Speaker, that we have too much attention in rail. Of course we have too much, we pay a lot of attention in rail, because the rail is one of the backbones of infrastructure in the Western Cape. So we need to fix rail in the Western Cape. The Lentegeur station, Mitchell's Plain, like many other stations across the country, Captain's Cliff, completely destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of people cannot get to work because of the rail infrastructure under the leadership of the ANC. And what does the ANC do? The ANC ministers do during the global pandemic level 5. They spent 19 million rand on buying new cars. 19 million rand on during level 5. Where were they driving to? Only goodness knows. But 19 million rand to buy brand new cars while we were in hard lockdown. While the poor, the middle class and the poor, which the ANC always stand up and say they're fighting for, are paying the high cost of rail, lack of rail, high cost of taxis. The taxi fares went up by another 9% 2 weeks ago. The fuel prices are going up by 230 next month in April. That is the reality of bad management, bad governments. Somebody said earlier, you can't eat clean audits. Well, you can eat clean audits, because clean audits allow you not to steal money, not to buy 19 million rand worth of cars during a global pandemic while the poor is suffering. Fix the rail system. That's what clean audit will enable you to do. In fact, Honorable Deputy Speaker, my colleague, Dr. Leon Schreiber, and to quote him, he said, there is one elite class of South Africans who are exempted from the cost of living. The very ANC cabinet that caused the poverty crisis in the first place. That is the reality of mismanagement of rail transport and the terrible non-prosecution of criminals in the taxi industry. Not the taxi industry, the criminals in the taxi industry. 88 murders, Honorable Deputy Speaker, 3 convictions. Not one of the ANC members have raised the issue out there. So while the ANC continues to enrich themselves and taking a backseat on these important members, we must welcome the continued engagements by my colleagues, Minister Mitchell and the City of Cape Town, to get rail back on track. If it wasn't for pressure applied by Minister Mitchell, and we had meetings with PRASA chairperson and the PRASA CEO, if he didn't apply the pressure and the Premier, of course, the rail system that currently the Southern Line and the Northern Line would not have come back on track. A year in the duty, and he managed to get some of the rails line back on track. That is the quality of people of this side of the bench. In the words of President Thabo Mbeki, the ANC in the Western Cape must improve the quality of their thinking. We therefore fully support the budget vote and all the work done by the Transport and Public Works together Western Cape government working. We thank the Minister, his department, and all his officials in ensuring that this Western Cape government continue to work. The DA fully supports this budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mackenzie. I now recognise Honourable Claire Ho. Oh, sorry. He's not there. Okay. And then not August, not Marie. Then Honourable Brinkes, are you speaking to this vote?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Okay. Yes, you may begin.
Oh, thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, Al-Jamaa want to express our concern for the ongoing taxi violence on the Cape Flats, especially, and taxi killings. Just this morning, another taxi driver was shot dead in the Delft area opposite Council Camp near Eindhoven in Delft. We call on the Western Cape government to play a better oversight role so that we can have an end to these taxi killings on the Cape Flats. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honourable Brinkes. I now recognise Honourable America.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and good afternoon, colleagues and Honourable Minister. Deputy Speaker, the DA welcomes the allocated funds towards the Department of Transport and Public Works, which exceed 9 billion rand for the 2020-2023 financial year. All things being equal, and touch wood that Russia will cease its aggression towards Ukraine. This is the year of economic growth through various infrastructure projects and development. And this is also a year of jobs through our infrastructure rollout projects, and the year of fighting harder for reliable and effective public transport systems in the Western Cape, Deputy Chair. The ANC has conveniently forgotten that Ukraine was part of the USSR, and they often say that Russia was there in the darkest hour of the liberation struggle, but Ukraine was part of the USSR at the time. So, Deputy Speaker, I want to thank the Minister of Finance, Honourable Mayne, for putting an emphasis in this budget, in his budget speech, that in this financial period, the building and upgrading of roads will be vital in our efforts in driving economic growth in our province. Not only will this bring better and quality roads to the province, but thousands of jobs will be created and thousands of families will benefit and experience economic relief. Whilst the province is on the road to economic recovery from COVID-19, a focus on developing infrastructure will play a significant role in building a growing economy in the Western Cape for the Western Cape and its people. So, Deputy Speaker, the department will place a special focus on transport development through improving, as the Minister was saying, mobility infrastructure. The George Integrated Public Transport Network is a success story in this regard. Thousands of George residents each day rely on Go George buses because of their reliability and effectiveness. The department will be expanding this project to further communities in George, which will see almost double its capacity. The rollout of Phase 4A to Tembaletu will be accelerated this year. We welcome the department's continued support for services like this to ensure that people have access to good and reliable public transport for work, to go to school, and for leisure purposes. Therefore, it goes without saying that this department recognizes its role in preventing and creating awareness regarding the many road accidents that occur in the province, especially during the festive season and on other holidays. I support the promotion of road safety initiatives that help build a network of drivers and commuters who internalize an awareness and respect for the rules of the road and participate in an all hands on deck approach that will ultimately save lives. Deputy Speaker, all lives matter. And so, while the pandemic impacted infrastructure planning and delivery, I am pleased that the department had managed to achieve the completion of several projects. These include the additional 40-bed dormitory at the Otaniqua Child and Youth Care Center facility in George, the completion of the roof replacement of the Saki Bartman Center destroyed by fire, as well as the Conradi Park mixed income housing project that was finalized and the first housing units handed over to its tenants. These, amongst many other completed projects, are significant milestones given the pandemic and the limitations brought on by the national state of disaster. And there are many in the province, but similarly, there are not many provinces in this country that can tell the success story such as this. In this financial year, Provincial Department of Public Works is again expected to create 550 jobs. The Western Cape government does not seem to only speak of economic recovery, but continues to act on it. Over 60 million rand, 60.5 million rand has been allocated to the construction for the child and youth care centers, while almost 28 million rand has been allocated towards the maintenance of these facilities. This will create further jobs for vulnerable people while creating safe spaces for children and youth. Deputy Speaker, last year, the department made public the Road Asset Management Plan report. Through this report, the need for road infrastructure development was highlighted. I therefore welcome the commitment towards road investments. An additional amount of 337 million rand had been earmarked as an additional funding for road infrastructure and maintenance in the province to address the backlogs that were highlighted by the Road Asset Management Plan report. While these funds are going to play a significant role in addressing maintenance issues with our roads in the province, we require more from the national government. According to the Road Asset Management Plan report, as I was saying previously, 73% of all our surface roads in the province have surpassed the lifespan of 25 years. This is the result of cumulative budget cuts from national government, which puts further strain on the daily commuting in the Western Cape. Even though this does not pose an immediate threat to general safety, it does mean the costs to replace our road infrastructure will increase exponentially if left unattended. Despite these challenges, Deputy Speaker, the province's commitment to bettering road infrastructure will ensure our roads remain in good condition. Throughout this budget, the department has shown the importance of road infrastructure and the significant role it plays in linking communities and enhancing the economy. Further to enhancing the economy through transport systems, the Blue Red taxi that has been vilified by Honourable Mvimbi, the pilot project, has been a great success. Whilst incentivizing better taxi services and improving driver behavior in the taxi industry, 17 million rand had been allocated for the extension of this program in this coming financial year. And I want to ask Honourable Mvimbi, name me another province where this is taking place. And I guess, It will be very difficult for him because this is the only province where an incentivized program with the taxi industry is being sort of established. This program is the first in South Africa, and that 8 new companies established as a result thereof, with over 519 operators and 924 drivers trained. There is no doubt, Deputy Chair, that more will be seen of this initiative in the future as we move into the outer financial years. Our traffic law enforcement has continued to play a critical role in providing critical traffic services, the Minister alluded to it, across the province, as well as in conjunction with South African police services, to oversee the enforcement of the state of disaster regulations. This will be done even better in this coming financial year, as more training officers will be trained and they will ensure that effective traffic services and safer roads for our drivers and commuters are being delivered. Although the management of rail services is not under the provincial government, the department has played a critical role in helping PRASA to fund rail services and its infrastructure assets. I'm pleased to see the department show more interest and enthusiasm to helping the national entity of PRASA to improve the services for our commuters in the Western Cape. Deputy Speaker, an economically just society is one in which economic opportunities are available to all, and people have the capabilities to make use of those opportunities. We are not there yet. South Africa is still an economically unjust society. Due to a history of apartheid, as well as governance failures and corruption in the democratic era, there are skewed and shrinking opportunities for all. South Africa desperately need a radically different approach to address the exclusion of our people. Over 2 decades of political freedom have not resulted in adequate improvement in the socioeconomic prospects of the majority of South Africans. If we wish to create an economically inclusive and non-racial society, we must address inequalities of opportunity to complement our hard-won political freedoms. Most importantly, we must get rid of the current ANC national government. So as the Democratic Alliance and the Western Cape government, in particular, we are committed to beat the past and build a better future for all South Africans. It is evidently clear in the performance and prioritization of the works of the Department of Transport and Public Works. This department is acutely aware of the pivotal role it plays in the realization of that ideal, in beating the past and building a better future. Spatial inequalities caused by apartheid, spatial design, and perpetuated by failed land reform, a history of legislative discrimination. This government and department seeks to address these challenges head on and recognizes that in its work, a whole society approach is required. It requires government, business, communities, families, and individuals to work hand in hand to overcome them. One of the most powerful ways government can amplify its impact is to leverage private sector involvement through procurement. In a way, it selects the companies and chooses to do business with. Where competing companies can provide goods and services at the same level of functionality and price, this policy should give preference to the company which makes the most positive socioeconomic impact as measured by the Sustainable Development Goals. and not narrow criteria that benefit an already well-connected political elite and Gucci entrepreneurs. Therefore, competency should be a priority in procurement because unfulfilled or poorly delivered contracts hurt those most reliant on government services. So, Deputy Speaker, in government, we'd also need to set our own priorities. Our priority interventions in government must be geared to address the key drivers of inequality of opportunity. Infrastructure development is a key driver for progress and a critical enabler for productivity and sustainable economic growth. It contributes significantly to human development, poverty reduction, and the attainment of the Millennium Development Goals. So, Deputy Speaker, as we move towards the full implementation of the Provincial Recovery Plan, we must be mindful of the restrictive financial environment we find ourselves in. As a department, the Department of Transport and Public Works will co-lead the jobs priority. Therefore, infrastructure development and maintenance plays a critical role in creating economic growth, which amongst many other benefits will create much needed jobs. Together, Deputy Speaker, we can beat the past and build a better future for all. The DA therefore fully supports this budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Member, I now recognise Honourable Minister Mitchell.
All right, thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, and thank you very much for all the contributions by all the members. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I think it's important that I start from the top because I mean the amount of times that we are re-giving the information to Honourable Mvimbi in particular, I actually wanted to get up and say, please refer to all my previous speeches, please refer to all my previous questions that you posed to me and read it. But I think in the interest of the citizens of this province, let me respond. Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Mvimbi raises the Noon Taxi Association in particular and Sanco, which attended the standing committee. We've answered the Noon Taxi Association and Sanco in that standing committee, but I went further, Deputy Speaker. We've engaged them. I've had a meeting with the Noon Taxi Association and the Sanco representative in last week, I think, last week. And there's certain resolutions that were taken, and we are in the process. So if the Honourable Mvimbi wants to come to Parliament, use a budget speech to play politics with the lives of the people of the Noon, I'm not going to entertain him. But for the record, the Noon Taxi Association has been engaged. The 57 permits, in fact, is not being issued by the Provincial Registrar's Office because the municipalities, Deputy Speaker, are the planning authorities. When it comes to route planning, we are merely the regulatory framework. I went as far as because I completely agree that the Noon, there's a need. And I've engaged the City of Cape Town in particular as the local municipality, but I went further and I asked that the department obtains a legal opinion on whether I'm able to override certain municipalities if I don't agree and there is a need. And if the Honourable Mvimbi listened to my speech, I spoke about it, so I'm not going to repeat myself. Honourable Deputy Speaker, Honourable Mvimbi goes on about Golden Arrow and Golden Arrow and Golden Arrow. Golden Arrow is being funded through a national grant given by the National Department of Transport. Golden Arrow is merely a service provider like many other service providers across the country. All provinces have received this grant and they have service providers. So I think it's disingenuous for Honourable Mvimbi to come here and lambaste a service provider that is not able to defend and stand up and defend him or defend them and for the incredible service that Golden Arrow is providing to the citizens of this province, and in particular with the failed rail system. If you look at B97 when we closed it, the implementation of B97 and providing that service to the citizens or the residents of that municipality on that particular route, it was Golden Arrow who stepped in and is providing that service. So I think it's disingenuous for Honourable Mvimbi to come here and to try and create an impression that there's monopoly for certain service providers. I want to take it further, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The Go George. I don't know, and I don't know, and I will provide it again. On the day of my announcement as the MEC for Transport and Public Works in this province, on the 24th, I think it was on the 24th of March, we were in George at Go George, where we were provided as a standing committee with the information that 100% of Go George, Honourable Deputy Speaker, is owned by the minibus taxi industry. So I don't know, again, why the perception is being created in this house that it's the department and that it's this government. It's the minibus taxi industry who owns Go George. If the Honourable Mvimbi was not aware, now he is aware, and I'm not going to repeat myself in this house again. With regards to the subsidization, Honourable Deputy Speaker, so when we speak about the minibus taxi industry, which I have a very, very good relationship with through Santaco and the various associations, the Western Cape government is the only province in this country that is providing that engagement, that constant engagement with the minibus taxi industry. It's only this department that is prepared to assist with the formalization of the industry. The formalization doesn't come from government. It's the industry that wants to be formalized. With formalization go regulatory aspects. And with that kind of engagement with the industry is happening on a daily basis. I mean, if you look at the amount of money being invested through the Blue Dot into the minibus taxi industry versus the measly 5,000 Rand that the national department is now trying to provide to operators across the country after months and months of engagement and begging the national minister to step in to actually adhere to the promise that he was making. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I think I must go a little bit further, and I want to bring Honourable Brinkheiser's point in. The reality is that taxi violence is a concern to all of us. And if it's not a concern, then there's a fundamental problem, because the minibus taxi industry in particular provides 70% of commuters with transport to and from economic opportunities across this province. 70% of people rely on a safe and reliable public transport. And when, with me being responsible for public transport in this province, when it affects a commuter, I will step in. So Honourable Mvimbi's comment about we treating the industry like children, I will take every available mechanism at my disposal to protect the commuters and passengers of this province, as well as those operators who is being caught in the crossfire, because not all minibus taxi operators are in between this. If Honourable Mvimbi can just see all the letters after the 24th of March of that thuggery that happened, that was called a march, of minibus taxi associations who said, please, we are not part of this. Please do not link us with this. Honourable Mvimbi doesn't know that, or doesn't see that, and doesn't want to know that. A march, we all support that if you have concerns, you can march, but then stick to the rules and don't infringe on the rights of other people. That particular march caused 4 million rands of damage and infrastructure. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the buses that was burned, the people that got injured, the personal vehicles that has been damaged in that process. That to me is not a march. It's thuggery. And I've called on SAPS to deal with those responsible in the harshest possible form. And I will never stand back for thugs that's trying to operate the industry. because not all operators and not all taxi service providers and association are part of this. And I have a duty to also protect those law-abiding operators. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the Honourable Mvimbi also says that the National Minister needed to step in. Let me tell the Honourable Mvimbi. Section 91 of the National Land Transport Act provides me, as the MEC responsible for public transport, with the powers to either close or close routes and ranks. The National Minister was here as support, and we've indicated that from the beginning. Didn't run here to save it because he didn't have the power to do it. It was this government that took the decision in the interest of the people of this province and commuters of this province to invoke Section 91 as the powers vested in me as the provincial MEC. And I'm going to do the same. I've published the intention to close Nyanga that will be published in the Government Gazette, because as if the violence continues and the unrest continues, I will do everything in my power and the powers that I have to protect the commuters and the citizens of this province. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I want to then just lastly say, I think it would be remiss of me not to say that there was a lot of comments made about the HOD said this in the standing committee in HOD. I don't know in what standing committee Honourable Mvimbi was and where I was, but there's definitely things that has been taken completely out of context, and I will make a commitment to the House today that I will ask the HOD that we will revert back to the standing committee and re-explain the budget as it was tabled. Because some people just doesn't want to read and doesn't want to accept the facts. Honourable Deputy Speaker, I think lastly I want to thank the chair of the standing committee, Honourable America and Honourable Mackenzie for their contributions and for Honourable Mackenzie for the time that he did chair, for all the support and assistance.
Order, members.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, can you?
Please, honourable members, let the minister finish. Yes.
Thank you very much for your contributions, and thank you for the support and leadership, but also for holding us accountable. I think accountable government or accountable governance is very important. So we've always, and I've always made myself available for interrogation at the standing committees. So I trust that as we go forward, we will forget about the politics, especially when it comes to public transport and the lives of the people and commuters. That we will in fact debate on facts, and if you have different suggestions or better suggestions, put it on the table. I want to use the leader of the opposition. Somebody approached him for the vehicle testing centres, and we listened to the recommendations or comments or proposals, and we've engaged, and it's now subsequently we've amended those things, and that is what you do as when you're in opposition. You don't come here and make a whole lot of comments and then people are not allowed to respond to that. Deputy Speaker, before I close, I just want to remind all motorists that the end of the renewal of your motor vehicle licenses is on the 31st of March. So if you haven't renewed your motor vehicle licenses, please do so. And then please drive safe as you approach the Easter holiday period. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Minister. Yes, I had to stand in a long queue to get my license sorted out, which I'm very happy about. Thank you, Minister. That concludes the debate on this vote. The Secretary will read the 6th order of the day.
Consideration of report of the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism on the COVID-19 Temporary Employee Relief Scheme funding process undertaken by the Unemployment Insurance Fund and the response views of the public in the Western Cape on this process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I've been informed by the Chief Whip that the Programme Authority resolved that there will be no lists of speakers, and the parties who wish to do so will be now afforded an opportunity to make a declaration on the report for a maximum of 3 minutes. I will now afford parties an opportunity to make that declaration if they so wish. I recognize the ANC. Anybody making a declaration?
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
William Vimbi
Yes.
is going to take the floor. Yeah.
There we go. Who am I addressing?
Yes. It's me, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
You may
Honorable
go.
Mvimbi.
Yes, Honorable Mbimbi, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the ANC welcomes and supports the report. The ANC raised serious concern about the high number of private companies that we identify as having defrauded the system, and that the majority of them, unfortunately, are in the Western Cape. We call for those companies to be named, shamed, and that they are prosecuted through criminal justice system for abusing state resources. This once again proves to us that white-collar crime is underestimated and underreported in this country. Private sector corruption must be exposed and culprit prosecuted. We further call on workers to demand from their employers proof of them registered for UIF, as many during this period missed the benefit as employers had not registered them or others were not paying their contribution. But in many instances, this deduction was still made. It is scandalous that employers will still steal from their workers. Often workers worked many years for them. We demand more capacity in the Department of Employment and Labor, particularly in non-metro region, to have access to information and improve their monitoring to ensure early warning of those companies that are delinquents to their labor relations obligations. The Western Cape government must, in their engagement with industry, encourage employers to adhere to their responsibility to their employees, as it's human right to do so. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vimbi. I now recognize the EFF. No. Good is not here. ACDP not here. Freedom Front Plus not here. Al-Jamaa. I now recognize Al-Jamaa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. No declaration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I now recognize the DA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, the DA welcomes this report. It is a shining example of the Western Cape Parliament holding a national entity to account, even though we do not always get responses from national ministers. The Standing Committee wanted to get a clear understanding of the multiple challenges facing the Unemployment Insurance Fund. To give effect to this, the committee resolved to invite the Unemployment Insurance Fund to brief the committee on the payment of TERS funding to applicants in the Western Cape. After the briefing, it became very clear that the committee needed to gauge the experience of residents of the Western Cape on their experiences applying and receiving TERS funding. A public participation process was conducted and responses were received via email, WhatsApp, and in response to a questionnaire that the Standing Committee put out for public comment. Core to the feedback received from members of the public during this public engagement process was the fact that the UIF had serious challenges and that this national entity was in deep trouble. It could not process TERS and unemployment benefits during the hard lockdown. This was partly due to the closure of all government services, as resulting in long queues at closed offices and an online system and a call center that crashed multiple times. Deputy Speaker, this public participation process highlighted that the people of the Western Cape were desperately trying to access government funds that they were entitled to. This report shows that the committee was able to use the mechanisms at its disposal to assist the residents of the Western Cape. The committee is keeping track of all outstanding UIF payments, and we will be using our NCOP colleagues to engage the UIF to make sure that this is done. Deputy Speaker, we should also be mindful that there's a political party in this House that have not paid UIF for their staff. And we did also receive some requests during this public participation process from staff members of the African National Congress who found out that their political party never paid their UIF. With that, Deputy Speaker, the The Democratic Alliance urges the House to support this report.
Honourable member, just take your seat. There's a point of order. What's your point of order,
Chair,
Honourable
just a
Sayed?
question. Is the Honourable Bosman willing to share the info with us so we can assist? Because I'm interested as to how he gets info directly from SARS. Thank you.
Honourable member, would you want to take a question?
I've completed my declaration.
Okay,
Honourable Deputy
please,
Speaker.
honourable members, order please. We're finishing off. Honourable Bosman, if you can proceed.
I have proceeded, Honourable Deputy Speaker. The Democratic Alliance urges all members of this House to support this report, and we do hope that the Honourable Deputy Chief Whip of the Opposition perhaps joins our committee once he becomes the Leader of the Opposition at the end of this year.
Thank you, Honourable Bosman. I am not going to open this conversation up. We have been in the House a very long time, Honourable Mackenzie. So I now note, Honourable members, that I have to announce that there are currently 25 Honourable members present and entitled to vote, and the House is therefore quorate. The question put before the House, the WCPP, is that the report of the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism be adopted. Are there any objections to the report being adopted?
No.
No.
No, there aren't. Thank you very much. No objections.
No.
Agreed to. I therefore conclude the business for the day. The Secretary will end the meeting and all members will be exited. Honourable members, before you leave, please note that tomorrow's session will begin at 10 a.m. The House is adjourned.